Right, so before we start, I'm just seeking leave. We've got a couple of people from committee members. We've got a couple of people who have asked to take photos, and I'm seeking leave from the committee. There's one member of the public and one member from Tim's office. Are people okay with that? Good. Yep, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, welcome to our hearing here with Fire and Emergency this afternoon. We are starting, and welcome Ravine. It's your first time in front of our committee, and I'm sorry to hear that your plane got cancelled, but it's lovely that we've got the technology for you to come in online.
Thank you very
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes to start with you, and then we'll open up with all of your opening remarks, and then we'll open from there according to the structured agenda for questions. So I'll hand to whoever is going to start with the opening remarks.
I will start, Madam Chair. Thank you. And I do apologise. This is indeed my first appearance, and I very much would have preferred to be there in person. But Fire and Emergency welcomes the opportunity to continue assisting in this inquiry. In the room with yourselves is the Chief Executive and National Commander Kerry Gregory, Deputy Chief Executive Megan Stifler, and Chief Financial Officer Daryl Purdy. At the previous appearance, Fire and Emergency described the challenge of managing a large, specialised and nationally dispersed fleet, including continuing pressure around the Type 3 and aerial appliances. Today, I want to acknowledge those challenges, set out what has changed and what remains to be done. When I first looked at this issue, I thought this must be simple. We're just buying a truck. How hard can it be? But a fire appliance is not simply a truck. It is a bespoke, complex machine operating in difficult environments. It is clear Fire and Emergency's fleet experience has been affected by procurement and contract management challenges, supplier performance, and COVID disruptions. Those factors have a very long tail, and that long tail is the reason why we are here. The Type 3 decisions were made in good faith when Fire and Emergency needed to renew an aging fleet and get appliances on the road. But the two-stage chassis and body build approach has not delivered the timeliness, the reliability or clarity of accountability that was intended. Would we approach these parts of that program differently now? Definitely. But we must pick the resultant issues up, address them, learn from them, and make the best decisions from here. In my short time as chair, 3 weeks, I have raised these matters with the Chief Executive and have been briefed on the reviews and changes that have already been made. Our focus will be on stronger contract management, clearer escalation of risks, better fault information reporting, disciplined acceptance processes, and greater board visibility of major programs. For future complex appliance, Fire and Emergency should, where practicable, favour more integrated or turnkey procurement models with clearer accountability for the complete appliance. That does not mean removing operational input. Firefighters' expertise remain essential in defining requirements, testing suitability, training crews, and confirming readiness. It means applying that input at the right stages with clear decision rights. I do not want to suggest that all the problems have been solved, because they have not. The legacy tale will continue and further issues may emerge. Indeed, we have paused the rollout of the Type 3s following discovery of a filter issue in operational testing, which the supplier is now working through. Like I said, it's not just buying a new truck. The board's responsibility is to ensure the organization responds quickly, applies lessons across the fleet, and provides the oversight required for the aerial program and future procurement. There is also wider funding challenges. Fire and Emergency responds to a broader range of emergencies these days, while maintaining a specialized heavy fleet. The Minister has commissioned a review of the funding mechanism, We will provide evidence about the investment challenge, recognizing that the options available involve difficult choices. Madam Chair, my approach today is straightforward. We will not minimize the experience of firefighters or communities. We will acknowledge the concerns, be factual about how we arrived here, and be clear about what has changed and what remains to be done. Our focus is stronger procurement, better information, clearer accountability, and sustained governance oversight. I am reassured that overall, fire and emergency continues to respond effectively to emergency events. I want to close by thanking the thousands of career and volunteer firefighters who work together to keep our communities safe, and the people across fire and emergency who support them. Thank you, and we look forward to assisting the committee.
Thank you very much, Raveen, and we also would have loved to have seen you in person, but next time. And you might notice that we've got some members as well online for similar reasons as well. So there's a few of us here and then some online. So I'm just going to say to members online that can you please, if you've got a question, can you please put your virtual hand up, and I will be watching that as well. But we're going to start with the first part of the structured agenda, which is the current and future strategy and capital planning. And I think, Tim, you have the first question.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, Raveen. Thanks to FENZ staff who are attending here. I'll just start. Fundamental question, is fleet a strategic priority for FENZ?
Yes.
Why is it not listed in the national strategy as a strategic priority?
If you look at the national strategy, it talks to building stronger business foundations. Fleet is part of those stronger business foundations that we're building for the organisation. Right.
So there's, as I try to unpick this and understand it, there's a few documents that sort of cover fleet. There's the asset management plan, and then there's a fleet strategy, and then there's the future operating capability. So correct me if I've got this wrong. The fleet strategy is yet to come out. That will go to is it next year? We're expecting that to go to the board for approval?
Correct. The fleet strategy itself hasn't been developed yet. And the reason for that is that it's been important for the organisation to get a good picture of our assets through the asset management plan. So over the last few years, we've been developing the asset management plans, one of those being the fleet asset management plan. And that gives a really defined 10-year journey of how we reduce the age of the red fleet to within 90% of it within the target age of that. So I guess the approach up to this point has been very much a like-for-like replacement of our assets, but certainly as we move forward, those three things you mentioned, the asset management plans, the future operating capability, and the fleet strategy itself will form the grouping of documents that will help guide us as an organisation around the strategy of how we ensure that we're developing the right long-term strategy.
So I understand what you're saying. Is it the right way around though? If your future operating capability is designed to consider more broadly the service requirements and what it is that it looks like in the future, surely you would start from that, then you would build out what your fleet strategy is to enable that, and then you could come up with the asset management plan, because the asset management plan, as you say, is like for like, but without those sort of defined and agreed levels of service. We're talking about assets with a 20-year 20 to 25 lifespan that take a long time to introduce. Don't we need to start by looking at 2040, 2050 and starting from that, rather than an asset management plan that is built on like for like, when we know that like for like probably isn't the answer?
So I think in the initial stages of the organisation coming together in 2017, and I guess the legacy of fleet assets that we inherited through there, stabilising the fleet needs to be the initial focus of that. So you're right, in an ideal world, that looking out seems the logical thing to do, but making sure that we can stabilise the fleet first, so that we actually can we can build the rest of the information that needs to build that fleet strategy. And that's around, you know, what's the long-term context and how that's changing. And we're seeing lots of changes in the way that we're being asked to deploy into communities. That's looking at a risk-based profile rather than just a like-for-like across the longer term. And it also looking at things like affordability and the longer-term maintenance costs of all of that asset base. So it's an affordability lens put across that as well.
So, I mean, the fleet, you've described the fleet asset management plan as a deliberate forward-looking roadmap for managing fleet over the next decade.
Yeah.
And it clearly distinguishes between what is required and what can be delivered.
Mm.
But, you know, and we'll get into type specific stuff further on, but I mean, do we actually know, until we define what those sort of service delivery levels are, until we know what the appliances actually need, we can't we're not forward looking and we're not distinguishing between what is required and what can be delivered, because if you look at the aerial fleet, the asset specifications were not static inputs. In other words, what we were looking for changed as the project went on. So surely we have to start with that capability definition, don't we?
But I think it's hard in any organisation to forecast what the end result's going to be, and it will be an evolving thing as we move forward. But getting the asset management plans in place and having an understanding around the, you know, what's the long-term plan to reduce that age of a fleet has been really important to ensure that we're focused in the right places while we build the next book. So there's been a lot of pieces of intelligible information missing from the organisation that's allowed us to bring all that together to actually form a robust strategy. And that is where the future operation capability, the asset plans, now we have a really good picture of that, come together, which will help us develop, you know, not a simple strategy, but a more mature strategy that sets us up for the future and allows us to look at what are the changing context and you know, how do we make those critical investment decisions and trade-offs as we move to a different way of operating as the context changes around us as an organisation.
I guess my fundamental concern is that we sort of have a culture, and it's not just within FENZ and fairness, of providing administrative solutions to mechanical problems. We add more layers of paper and things that achieve compliance, and yet we've got an asset management plan, but it hasn't. Has it helped? I don't know. I'd argue maybe it hasn't. We have all these sort of layers, and then think, well, is it actually, all these bits of paper, are they actually making it any better when you go to the local fire station?
Well, personally, I think that the asset management plans have helped in that there's a real detailed plan around how we bring that age profile of the fleet over the next 10 years. We didn't have that prior to the asset management plans. So, you know, that gives a really good picture that sits in there. If we look at the, you know, the development of the FOC work, that's another big piece of work that will actually look at not just a one size fits all, but looking at what the risk is and how we apply different capabilities to different risk. So that will inform the asset management plans around the decisions that can be made in there. So if you haven't got that work, you need to develop it to make a difference. The difference that people will see on the ground floor, that firefighters will see, and I certainly, you know, acknowledge the frustration that our firefighters have. You know, when we've got an aging fleet and they're breaking down at times, that's so frustrating. I've been in the situation myself. So, you know, I in no way, you know, disregard the frustration that our firefighters feel when they have appliances break down. And that's why there's needed to be a focus on how do we stabilise that first? How do we actually focus on ensuring that the appliances that we're rolling out the door aren't breaking down? We're bringing them with an age profile. And that's not a short-term fix. That's like I say, we've got a 10-year plan that's really definitive about that.
And just final one if I can, and then so how would, you know, given these things you say they are actually adding value, how would you assess FENZ is going against your asset management goals?
Say that question again, sorry.
How would you assess FENZ is doing against your asset management goals?
Against the asset management goals. Well, I think what we're doing is we're building the foundations to make us successful in this space. If if I look at some of the procurements that we've had over the past years, you know, the things like the type 1s, the type 2s, you know, they've been really good procurement, end-to-end processes. Our type 3s has just been frustrating for everybody and, you know, taken far longer than anyone would anticipated that to have taken, or that's acceptable for that to take. But, you know, it's learning from the different processes and putting those in place so that we are applying what's working well and improving as we move forward. The asset management plans, you know, that's going to stand us in a really good stead to actually have confidence that over a 10-year plan, we're going to bring the asset age to that, but we can't do it overnight. And that's the frustration.
Sorry, I meant the specific 5 asset management goals that you have.
How we're going against them?
Yes.
I'd have to come back here with a response to that. I don't want to mislead the committee. And
No, that's fine. Are you aware of the 5 asset management goals?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give us an example of one of those goals and then how you would assess how you're going?
I can't give them verbatim, but Daryl, have you got those there?
It's in the asset management plan.
No, you've got 5 asset management goals that are listed in your 10-year plan, 2020 to 2030.
In the 10-year plan. So in our asset management fleet plan you're talking about?
No, in the FENZ. Yeah,
I'm not sure which document you're referring to.
in your 10-year plan, 2020 to 2030, page 38 will have your asset management goals.
Oh, the 10-year plan has been superseded by the strategy.
So that's the national strategy, but that's 2019 to 2045. That starts a year earlier.
It's been superseded by the current strategy that takes us through to 2030. So from 25 to 2030. So that was a pre-existing document.
So does the 2019 to 2045 strategy still, is that still a thing?
We only have one organisational strategy, which is the current strategy.
Which is the 25 to 30?
Yes.
So the one that went out to 2045 is gone?
Yes.
So the current strategy is only a 5-year plan?
Yes. And that recognises the fact that in a 5-year continuum, things change, like things are changing really fast in that thing. So having a strategy that goes out to 2045, you know, I would say that no one could predict what 2045 would look like for us as an organisation.
But isn't that the point of future operating capability, is to look out to say, because the assets that you buy are going to be operating in 2050 plus.
So future operating capability is different from our current strategy, which takes us through to 2030. What we're doing as an organisation is like the organisation has tried to do too much and hasn't been focused. So having a clear focus through our strategy for the next 5 years, or the 5 years of the time of the strategy, to actually ensure that the organisation's focusing on the right things to take us forward. And that is looking at, you know, our safe, resilient, effective services that we have, looking at our role as a regulator and in prevention, looking at, you know, stronger relationships and working with other agencies and communities. It is about, you know, making sure that we've got stronger business foundations. And it's about supporting our people to be effective through our business.
Okay.
So got a follow-up here from Mike Davidson.
Up to that, the fleet strategy, when was the decision to actually do a fleet strategy made?
Well, there's been lots of discussion around a fleet strategy, and, you know, it goes right back even to the International Convention Centre fire, where through there was a recommendation that we needed to have a fleet strategy in place. The realisation of actually developing a fleet strategy showed that we first needed to have things like the asset management plans, and we needed to have the future operating capability work that informs those to actually bring it all together. Otherwise, we're putting together a fleet strategy that won't effectively, it'll sit in a drawer and it won't be effective because it's not having the right injects in it to actually inform it to allow us to be successful in there.
Okay. We're going to Lamonga on screen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes,
really
good.
And hopefully I'll continue to follow on. I would like to know from the explanation this morning and from the new board chair's opening words in terms of the strategy that is supposedly, and hopefully I've heard it properly, fit for purpose, because lots of the feedback that I've had as a member of Parliament, but also from the community, is in terms of what is relevant and what is out of date. And all of us around the Select Committee have had a number of concerns raised by many different various firefighters. We've visited fire stations. How relevant in terms of the 5-year strategy will that be in terms of moving forward? So appreciate your explanation to the CEO. However, at this time, since the inquiry or before it began, it is really important that you've got a theoretical base or moving forward in terms of the strategy and fleet management, etc., reading all the documents. And so I'd like to hear from CEO, please.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the question. If I'm interpreting the question right, I think, if you're looking at real material gains, the asset management plans give a really good plan around how over the next 10 years we're actually going to bring the asset age up across 90% of our appliances into the determined asset age. So I think, that gives a really good way in which we're going to move the fleet forward. Having that information and having that plan allows us to actually give effect to it now over the next 10 years.
Supplementary, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So thank you for the replies. In terms of the workforce, I might be asking out of turn, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Just ask it and I'll rule it in or out if I...
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the workforce, I want to ask questions around training and planning and what is scheduled. We have had answers during the recent hearings, but I would like to ask, in terms of, will the whole training and development and workforce, will those sections of your overall plan, when do they come in and how effective are they in terms of rolling out? So I've heard the questions that you've asked earlier. You've got a 5-year window. How is that built into the current environment of firefighters and training and development?
It's on the border of a fleet inquiry, but if you can bring it, if there's an answer that brings it into scope, or if you think it's out of scope, if there's anything that brings it in.
I'm happy to answer the question, and I think it is relevant as far as when we bring operational appliances on board, there's a training component that sits in there in ensuring that people understand the new technology and the new components in that. But if I talk about training itself, with a workforce of, on 14,000 people, and of those 11,800 roughly volunteers, it does bring some unique challenges to training in the training system, I guess, that we have as an organisation. So you will notice from the literature that one of the areas that we're reinvesting into, so that we're trying to create some space to reinvest in, is around training. And we've been doing a lot of good work around training, and even speaking with the committee last year, when we looked at the work that we'd done to go back to a category 4 GTE around the moderation and assessment work in our training. Lots of, I guess, bespoke improvements across training, but not looking at the training system as a whole. So the training system as a whole is going to be a multi-year program because it's, I guess, when in a way similar to Fleet, when Fire and Emergency came together, it brought different training environments and approaches from all the different entities that came in. And Fire and Emergency's never really looked at that as the system and saying, what does our training system need to look like? And that's where our investment and time and energy is going in at the moment. And that's it's a focus of mine. It's a focus of the DCE responsible for that, and it's a focus of the board, which is why it's one of those areas of reinvestment for us as an organisation.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next question from Andy Foster.
Yeah, look, thank you. I'm just looking at, in terms of you're thinking about strategy, one of the things that you said to us that you don't know what the future is going to look like, and you then gave us an answer which talked about business foundations, supporting your people to be effective, relationships and all sorts of other things like that. I didn't hear anything there at all about fleet, although I'm assuming that supporting our people to be effective, which was the words you used, I think, means you're actually going to have some fire engines that actually work for people to do their work. I mean, in what possible scenario is there in future that you are not going to need the kind of fire engines that you're using at the moment? You're certainly going to need aerials, probably more so than now, because if intensification continues. You're certainly going to need your Type 3s, but you're going backwards at the moment. You've been going backwards since FENZ was established.
Thank you. And if I look at the essence of your question, firstly, when I talk about stronger business foundations, that is about our fleet, and that is about how we build a fleet that actually supports our organisation, supports our firefighters to do the phenomenal work that they do across the country every day. What I would say in there is that if you talk about the changing environment, and yes, I take your point around the current fleet that we have is going to be required in the years to come, and that's why we've got a current focus on stabilising the fleet that we've got. Our asset management plans with the 10-year plan will move the state of the fleet up. It will make a difference in there, and that's why we've developed that work. But some of the things that need to be considered there, and I'll get Megan to talk about this in a minute, but you look at the role that fire and emergency plays in weather events at the moment, as an instance. You spoke about aerial appliances. What role does drones play in that? So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered as technology advances, as things go on, rather than just a status quo. But do you want to speak, Megan, just a little bit around some of the things you're seeing and considering as part of what our asset portfolio might look like?
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. When I first came to fire and emergency, it was evident that we had to, as Kerry has mentioned, stabilise our existing fleet because it was beyond the age where we wanted it. Part of the work I'm really proud to lead on behalf of operational response is who do we need to be in the future, and that's what's coming out of the FOC work. As firefighters, if we go back 20 years, we would never have thought our role would have been 45% motor vehicle and medical. So that shows you how quickly our industry changes. What the FOC, Future Operating Capability, is wanting to do is cast out about what could happen in our future, then bring it back into reasonable timeframes. So, for example, where will technology take us as firefighters in 10, 20 years? Then bring it back into a reasonable 5-year. What can we do over the next 5 years that progresses us towards that future? We have technology, we have the built environment. It is all created at a very fast pace. And for us to imagine what it's going to look like in 2040, we'd be aiming for something that mightn't exist. So I think the 5-year frames is reasonable. It gives us enough time to procure new fleet or equipment and gives us enough time to also train our people appropriately for that capability that we see ahead.
Great.
So look, if I can just follow up with a sup there. I mean, you said 20 years ago that a lot of you wouldn't have considered that. What I think you said 45% of your role would be medical, motor vehicle, etc.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that your firefighting role has diminished. That just means something else has been added on top of it, which does go to the issue, which is not part of this inquiry, but does go to the issue of how FENZ is funded, which I'm very grateful that the Minister has actually taken that up. But the incidence of fire hasn't gone away, and I don't think you would be telling me it's diminished either. You've still got to have vehicles that are fit for purpose to do that core part of your job.
Yes, thank you, and I agree with you, and that is why our focus has been on stabilising our core fleet. There will be potentially other demands on what other capabilities that we need through that, but at the end of the day, our primary responsibility under the legislation sits in there around fire, and that will always be at the core of what we do. The size of the network and how that network distribution looks is something that needs to be considered as far as what's the risk profile of the different areas. There's a big difference between the risk profile in a really isolated rural community to that in the heart of a major city. So the type of appliances, the type of equipment isn't just a one size fits all.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. But at the moment, when you talk about stabilising your fleet, you are still going backwards because the rate at which you should be replacing the fleet to keep you under the under your age cap, you should be progressing forwards, but you've been going backwards since FENZ started, certainly with the Type 3s and with the aerials.
You're correct with Type 3s, certainly. If you look at the graphs that we've provided in there across the Type 1s and 2s in the rural fleet, we've been holding the line in
That's why I didn't include them.
Yep. But with the Type 3s, like I said before, it has been very frustrating, and the time that it's taken because of a number of reasons to actually get those Type 3s on the run and procured and into New Zealand has been a challenge for us as an organisation.
Okay, thank you.
I'll come back on those things later on.
Okay, thanks, Andy. And I've got two more primaries in this section, the first being from Tim.
Thank you. Just for the board chair, one of your goals you said at the start was about having greater board visibility. So in the initial hearing to this inquiry, I asked the then board chair if the board had been asking questions about the Type 3 man trucks, the same questions that we had been asking in the last couple of years. And she emphatically told me yes, and that she was just as concerned as we were. In the response to question 40 that I submitted after that hearing, where I asked for the reference from those board meetings, there are none after December 2023. So how do you explain that?
Thank you for the question. As you would appreciate, it is very difficult for me to explain what happened previously. Firstly, because I haven't put my mind to it. And secondly, I wasn't there. But I think the intention of your question, I can address that. It is my expectation that the organisation, when we appear before Parliament, we provide information that is accurate, complete, and readily understandable. And if there is uncertainty, we will say so. If the numbers change, we will explain why. And if we discover an error, we will correct it promptly. So I cannot speak for the past, but I want to give you assurance that the organisation that I am chair of, my expectations will be very clear that when we tell this committee or anyone in Parliament that we have had a certain degree of oversight, we should be able to provide the evidence to prove that.
Yeah, but I mean, my fundamental question is, has the board that you now lead, I appreciate it wasn't you at the time, but have they had the appropriate level of oversight? Because we have not been given any evidence that suggests that for all of 2024 and all of 2025, this topic was even raised once.
Yeah, so what I'm saying, thank you. What I'm saying is I do not have an answer to that here now, but either the chief executive of the officers may have that, but we can always bring the information to you.
Sure.
And Kerry has his hand up, so I'm going to hand to him.
Thank you, Chair. And I just wanted to add into that conversation that the board has been holding us to account through their Financial Investment and Sustainability Committee, so the subcommittee of the board, and that feeds up through to the Minister's Office has been having a lot of focus on us as an organisation and what we're doing in fleet and the interest as part of those discussions that we have with her on a regular basis. But the main focus for the board has been through their FIS committee.
I understand that answer. The issue that we have is that it's a really clear question that has been submitted in writing. Can the board please share minutes of meetings where they have asked FENZ staff about tranche 2 man Type 3 appliances? And there are quite a few between 2017 and 2023. There's nothing beyond that. And this is the only tool that the public have for oversight is the board. And I think there is a genuine concern out there as to whether or not they've been doing their function? Does the board have the right people, the right capability, the right skills and experience to actually fulfil the role that they hold? What would your view as the chair be?
Well, thank you. As chair, I would say that I agree that the board needs to have the appropriate skills to function and to provide that rigorous oversight on assurance, accountability, and execution.
Do you currently have that?
I would not know. And so it would be improper for me to provide a judgment at this stage.
Thank you. And I do want to, we've got one more question in this section, and so we're coming to the end. So I'll hand over
Thank
to
you.
Mike.
And I just got a couple of little stuff to follow on from
Yeah.
Def Foster. And I guess it was the comment you made around holding the line with your, I guess, the initial 9 years around the oil and other appliances apart from type 3. Was that a directive to hold the line over that period of time, or were you actually meant to improve the standard of the fleet?
Well, certainly if you look at the type 3s, the intention of the type 3s was to procure.
Oh, sorry, I'm not talking about the type 3s. You were saying the other appliances, you're holding the line. You've held the line.
Yeah.
Was that a directive to hold the line and just actually keep it at the state they were in and just, or were you meant to actually improve the standard of the fleet?
Well, the aspiration is always to improve it, but we are balancing the fleet across all of the asset classes and the prioritisation across those asset classes. And
I guess I'm wondering, like I looked at, and you mentioned in the submission that you've invested 114 million over the last 9 years. And if you look at your total revenue you've received over that 9 years, it's circa 6.3 billion. So this equates to like 1.8%. Do you think that was enough to be going into the fleet during the last 9 years, especially when you look forward and you're budgeting 356 million over the next 10 years and saying that's 154 million short? Do you think you were budgeting enough over the last 9 years to actually move forward in the right direction?
I'll pass to Gerald to have to fill in around the allocation of the different finances in the different areas. But what I would say is that what we've been balancing there is investment in the right parts of the organisation to keep moving it forward. And if we'd invested more into the fleet, the question of that is where does it fall over somewhere else? So in balancing in the fiscal parameters that we have, making the right decisions, I think the balancing across the fleet has led us to the situation we are, and whether that could have been different.
So do you think the fact we're here today means that wasn't balanced correctly?
Well, do you want to talk about how we've balanced that, Gerald, across the different?
I think it's a simple question. How it was balanced in the past to basically put 1.8% of the total revenue towards fleet. Do you think that was the right call in hindsight?
I think the reason that we are here today is predominantly because of the challenges that we've had around the type 3 fleet. And that doesn't necessarily come into the investment in there. It comes into some of the challenges and issues we've had being able to find the right solution and get that put in place. So yes, I do think the balance across the asset portfolio has been right.
So you're saying if we didn't have the issues with the type 3, you wouldn't be sitting at this end of the table right now?
Well, we'd obviously still be reporting to select committee, but I don't think we'd be having the same discussions today that we would be having.
Okay, so I'll go primary now. We were hoping that we'd see the National Fleet Manager today, but our understanding is he's resigned and left, which I guess was a bit of a surprise at the time. Did he give his required contracted notice period before he left?
Certainly the national manager left, and we were comfortable with the notice that he gave us as an organisation.
Was it the same as the contracted notice period?
I don't know that information. I'd have to have a look at what his particular contract was with us in that regard.
Did he receive an exit package that would be greater than just this holiday pay? The national manager did a really good job for us as an organisation in actually
ensuring that all the assets, like it'd been with us well before fire and emergency came into existence. So bringing all those assets into the organisation and making sure that we had the ability to function. He gave a lot of service to the organisation, and when he advised that he decided to step down of his own accord, then we were happy to accept that request from him and
Who did he report to?
He reported to the Deputy Chief Executive of Assets.
During his tenure, did he raise any concerns with how the fleet was progressing in terms of obviously the age of it?
There was certainly, we had visibility around the age of the fleet, yes.
So he raised concerns?
He raised the challenge around the ageing nature of the fleet and the ability to deal with that ageing profile, which, like I said, the asset management plans have been developed to actually give us a plan around, and that's been over the last 3 years, they've been developed to actually give us a plan around how we work ourselves out of that as an organisation.
And that DCE, is she still employed by FENZ?
No, the DCE.
She's also left?
She has also left.
Does she
now.
also receive remuneration on exit higher than holiday pay?
I've said, I haven't said that anyone's received a remuneration payment,
but you can tell us now, tell us now that they haven't, if you like. I'll give you the chance.
no, the DCE has not received any extra remuneration. She's gone on to another role, which.
Why did we never see her at this inquiry in any of the previous hearings, given the focus was fleet?
Well, the last select committee that we had, she was on annual leave over that period of time, so she wasn't available for that. But you have previously had one of our fleet specialists in that field when I didn't attend the select committee.
Okay, we're going to move now to the next section, which is type 3 appliances, including how chassis were selected, body build and allocations to stations. Was there anything that you wanted to say first in this section?
No, I'm happy to take questions in there.
Thank you.
Covered a
So
lot of it.
the committee's agreed, we're going to go through just a bit of a timeline for the type 3, and in the interest of time and the number of questions we might have, I might just start with tranche 2. So as I understand, tranche 2 began in August 2019 when, is it Penske or Penske? I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce it. Effectively rang up and said it's now or never if you want some more of the NA16 cab chassis. Is that correct?
I understand that there was an opportunity for the organisation at the time, and they made that decision to purchase the chassis. Yeah.
And that was because that model was going out of production or something like that. So it was now or never. At the time, the next generation project had already begun, and we'd had the 47 tranche 1 trucks.
Mm-hmm.
There had never been talk that I can read of a tranche 2 of the MAN until then. Was it just a reactionary decision at that time? Someone, look, there's 30, let's grab them? Or was it a considered, actually, this is part of the strategic plan that we have to build up our type 3?
Well, certainly when I look back at the records of that time, it shows that the decisions that were made under those operational pressures weren't really supported by sufficiently strong procurement processes. It wasn't supported well around the documentation, whether there was good prototype gates in place for those, the contract management. So right through the process, we've looked at those and seen there are a lot of things that could have been done better as an organisation. The actual thinking behind that decision, it's hard to tell from that time, but I'd say looking back, it would appear that the ability to expedite by buying another big block of those appliances seems to be one of the major drivers.
I understand that, and in the interest of time, I'll skip through, but obviously SEM had been engaged with tranche 1, and therefore they ended up getting a contract in 2021 to build a prototype. And as you've told us, Anglico effectively cold called you and made I think you call it an unsolicited proposal to make a prototype for tranche 2. Is that correct?
That's what the records show.
Yeah. So you ultimately select Anglico, and I'm just going off your fleet timeline here that was provided for our March hearing. So is this correct? It says in September 2022, Fire and Emergency orders from Anglico a trial appliance to be built on a man cab chassis that Fire and Emergency already owns. Is that correct?
In 2022, sorry, can you just repeat?
Yeah, well, the fleet says that you order a trial appliance from Anglico in September 2022.
Gerald, do you want to talk to that just while I
Could I refer you to pages 54 and 55 of our submission,
You can.
please? So the bottom of,
Specifically paragraph 5.54 perhaps?
correct, starting
Yes.
5, yeah, so that's,
So this one was wrong, was it? The one that you provided for our March hearing? Because the fleet timeline, happy to provide a copy, but specifically it says September 22, but that's wrong. I'm just trying to get the dates right. It's actually, what date is it actually? It's
so,
September 2021?
sorry, could I refer you to paragraph 5.59
Yes.
and 5.60? So those, and 5.61, those are the dates.
So those ones are correct, not the other ones that we've been provided. Okay, so when did Anglico, it says in 5.54 that they started to build a body in July 2021, is that correct?
So in paragraph 5.59, it says that we shipped a man cab chassis to Anglico for the prototype build in late 2021.
In late 2021?
So can I refer to paragraph 5.59,
Yes.
please?
Yeah, I'm reading that. So,
And then, sorry, can I refer to paragraph 5.61, which documents when the completed prototype arrived in New Zealand, which was December 2022.
yeah, so, okay, so, on page 51 though, in paragraph 5.27, I just want to get these dates correct. It says, let's make sure we're getting this right, that Anglico was selected in July 2021.
5.27, so
Which one?
So I'll come back to you. Okay, so you're saying it's September is the correct date that they were selected and one was sent over? But so that's actually before SEM get their contract in November 2021? And that's in your post-hearing questions numbers 11 and 15. I'm just trying to
I'm just trying to get the right dates for you, so.
Yeah,
so
I'm just trying to
clear,
understand,
sorry.
because it looks like SEM got their contract in November 2021. They've been working with you since April 2020. Anglico, it looks like, rang up in July 2021, said, we'll make one for you, and in September had a contract signed.
So can I again refer to paragraph 5.40
Yes.
through to 5.47? So that sets out in our written submission
Yeah.
the engagement and the dates with SEM.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that is correct in April 20, but they didn't get their contract until November 2021.
The second stage, the full build.
So there was an initial design piece with SEM,
Yes.
that's correct.
Yeah.
And then secondly, once that design piece had completed, they were engaged to build a prototype.
Yeah, correct. And that would be the November 2021 point when they got the full contract. Is that right?
So in paragraph 5.48, the second stage commencing in January 2021 involved formally engaging SEM via direct sourced approach to build a type 3 man prototype appliance.
Okay, so with that, ultimately, though, you went with Anglico, and the reason that you select Anglico is because their trial appliance was meant to arrive in early 2022. It was meant to arrive in February 2022, but it doesn't arrive until December. Is that correct? This is the Anglico trial appliance.
So the Anglico trial appliance, so this is paragraph 5.61, arrives in December 22.
Yes.
Undertakes acceptance testing that occurred during February to March 2023.
Yep.
And then there was further operational testing conducted in May 2023.
Right. So it turns up, what's that, 10 months late, and then it gets tested the following year in February and March. Some documents say just February, some say February and March, but I assume it's sort of late February, early March, something like that.
Well, can I refer you to paragraph 5.61 in our written submission?
Yeah, your post-hearing question for the last one, number 20 said February only, but number 19 says February and March. So, yep, let's go with that. When was the decision made to go with Anglico and agree to a contract with them?
So so paragraph 5.64.
Yes.
The procurement plan was produced in February 2023.
Right. So I just want to understand this. The truck arrives in the country in December 2022. It is tested in February and March 2023, just for acceptance testing. And then the operational testing takes place in May 2023. But back in February, you've already produced the direct source contract with Anglico.
Procurement plan.
Procurement plan.
So clearly from the documents, the planning was underway.
So the decision was made before we even tested it.
The procurement plan was being prepared.
And in March, am I not correct that in March that it was delegated to the CE?
So paragraph 5.65 is
Yes.
what you're referring to?
It was delegated authority to the CE in March 23.
That's what the record shows, correct?
So at this point, SEM trial appliance hasn't even turned up in the country, has it? The one that's been in the pipeline to some degree since April 2020, and effectively Anglico rang up and said, we'll build you one. It turns up 10 months late. We haven't even done the acceptance testing, and we're pretty much on short finals to buy 28 of them.
So you're correct. So paragraph 5.52 would show that the SEM prototype does not arrive until June 2024.
So I'm just trying to understand this bit where we're making a decision without even testing the Anglico trial appliance. I mean, is that normal?
No, that's not normal. And like I said earlier, it is obvious looking back at those things that, the decisions made under the operational pressures of, ensuring that there was type 3s coming into the system, certainly could have had stronger procurement aspects to them through there. And, that's to some degree that's caused delays in the longer term by not putting the rigor at that time.
I mean, but it was 10 months late at the very start, even just the trial appliance. That must raise some alarm bells, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the organisation accepts that the rigor at that time wasn't actually applied, and our focus is actually on dealing with the long tail and the legacy of that, making sure that we can get the trucks operational, but making sure, more importantly, that going forward, that the learning from that is applied so that it doesn't end up in the same position.
But I mean, there was no rigor, effectively, is what it looks like. There's a thing that says it went through and met rigorous testing requirements, but then it turned out that a whole bunch of stuff didn't work, like the RFI issue, radio frequency interference, deck monitors not working. We already knew at this point that there were issues with the intercooler on the tranche 1. I assume it's likely that could happen on tranche 2. In fairness to you, you provided a pretty robust list of the faults that have been found. But we didn't even have a chance, did we, if we're not even testing that stuff before we go and buy 28 of them?
And like I say, we've tried to be upfront with the committee around, what we've found and what we've discovered from those decisions at the time. And yes, the organisation could have applied some stronger rigour over that period of time, but we're very much focused on, how we ensure that that doesn't happen again, and we have the rigour in our processes through that.
Because it says the rear axle weight was tight to limits, but testing wasn't conducted while fully loaded. So if it's tight to limits, not fully loaded, and we haven't even tried to fully load it, this is from this is paragraph 5.71. The comprehensive acceptance testing regime for the prototype showed full compliance across a wide range of criteria. Yet, later evidence demonstrates that significant defects still emerge and required correction after those tests have been completed. So either fundamentally our wide range of criteria and our comprehensive testing regime are fundamentally flawed, or we just haven't done it.
Sup from Mike.
Okay.
Sup from Mike.
Thank you. 5.81 in your submission. It talks about you actually going overseas to develop and test alternative compliant type 3 designs, eventually selecting SEM and Anglico. Just wondering, what was that date when you went overseas? Because I just reading through this, it looks like that you've gone out and found Anglico, but obviously previously said the Anglico approach you. So I'm just trying to work out what date that happened.
So just to clarify, if I may, around SEM and Anglico. So fire and emergency approach SEM, Anglico approach fire and emergency. So that's what the documentation shows.
Okay. So this is not quite correct in this 5.81 where you say that you've actually been forced to go overseas to look for something.
SEM is based in Australia.
I was talking about Anglico. Okay. And in 5.65, you talk about obviously doing a final approval for 28 man Anglico type 3 appliances, which is quite a significant decision, by circa 30 million, I assume. And that was done through an out of cycle board process. And I'm just kind of curious about actually what that process looks like to actually make a decision around $30 million. And do you have any idea how that process is done for out of cycle board decisions?
Not here today. We'd have to go back and have a look at that and then bring that back to you.
But do you mean in general terms?
Yes, for this out of cycle.
Like, is it just done through email, or did they actually have another meeting? Because clearly at this point in time, there's been some significant issues with the procurement of type 3. And then you make a out of cycle board decision that's going to do another procure another 28 type 3 appliances with significant costs. And I'm just wondering actually what that process looked like, because I would have thought if I was a board member, I'd be a little bit cautious about making big decisions given the actual history of type 3.
That's a valid question, and I don't want to mislead the committee, and we need to go back and have a look. Out of cycle board decisions can range from the board coming together to have a special meeting to having an email approval process to having a discussion at a meeting and then signing that later. So I'm not sure which one of those processes, and we can come back to you with what that looks like.
Okay, we've got moving to Andy Foster now on the screen.
Yeah, look, thank you. Look, just going back to the overview of the fleet that you've got, and we are focusing at the moment on type 3. So you've got In one place, you've given us 196 vehicles in your fleet, and in another place in your asset management plan, 206. Why the difference? And does that mean you've actually had a number of vehicles removed from service in that period of time? Because I think the asset management plan predated the later information you gave us.
So I have 196 from the asset management plan.
Okay, because you've got in the asset management plan, it says there's 206 at one point.
Are you able to refer to the page?
Yep, it is page. Oh, that's very helpful. They're not numbered. It's under 3.2 fleets assets summary. So type 3 fire appliances, 206.
That is, you're correct. It is 206. It may have been a timing matter between the asset management plans and the information provided to the committee at in the May hearing.
So
We have
which
to
one?
come back and clarify that.
So
But
which
it's
one is?
196 at the moment.
It's 196. Okay, so where have we got 10 which have been retired, or a net 10 which have been retired in that period of time?
We'll have to clarify that with you.
That would be very helpful. I mean, given that we're focused on fleet and particularly type 3 and aerials, I'm disappointed that you can't tell me why that trajectory's happened. Okay, so I'll go back. Let's start with the 196. 20-year life cycle. You should be replacing roughly how many per year then? I mean, I can do maths, but I get you to do it for me.
Andy, can I suggest that you just hold that till we get to procurement?
It is about type 3, specifically about type 3. It's about the fleet.
Okay, it's just that we hadn't quite finished where we were. I thought you had a supplementary, that was all.
Oh, well, I thought you were going to me for a substantive.
Oh, sorry. Look, carry on then at the moment, but we
Okay.
might, just indicating we might come back.
Well, look, where I'm going with this is, and I'll give you the answer. Obviously, you should be replacing 10 a year, roughly speaking. You've replaced 10 in the entire existence, according to your own data. You've replaced 10 in the entire existence of FENZ operation. How do you explain that? I mean, I know you've had problems with procurement, but that just looks, you're going backwards at a great rate of knots, and the age of the fleet, the type 3 fleet, is getting older very, very fast as well. I mean, that's you can't blame now. Surely you can't blame now what you inherited, because that's almost 10 years ago.
We're not trying to blame, what we inherited through there. The tale of the type 3s does go back before fire and emergency, but the ability to actually procure and deliver the type 3s certainly sits there over the 10-year of the life cycle. And I think the submissions have gone into quite a bit of detail around what some of those challenges have been, and why some of those timelines are longer than anyone would have liked or programmed through there. But
Given that you're
actually on getting it moving forward.
Given that you're currently replacing at 1/10 of the rate that you should be, according to your own asset management and life cycle plans, how are you going to turn that around? And actually, you've got to do more than that, because you actually got more than half of your type 3 fleet is now over the age target.
So the asset management plan sets out a replacement program of 122 type 3 appliances from 2026-27 through to 2035-36. That won't bring the entire type 3 fleet 100% within its target life, but it will bring it 86% within its target life by the year 2035-36. That's the plan.
Well, that's 2026-7 to 2035-36.
36.
But that's over nine years worth. Is that we're talking about there?
Correct.
So you are slightly ahead of the game on that one then, because you should be replacing about 90 in that period if you're just holding static.
That's correct. So the asset management plan,
So you
plan's
get
122. Yes.
Okay, so you're getting a small gain. The other thing which we heard earlier in the hearings was the mix of where you're spending your capital money. And I think we got a pretty much 20%, 20%, 20% across, across fleet, across buildings, across equipment, across IT. And it's tempted to ask questions about IT because it doesn't seem the IT system, certainly for the vehicle side of it, is much use in terms of actually giving you a good picture of what's going on. It's all being done manually. That's what all your firefighters are telling us. So is that balance of where you're spending the money the right balance?
For me to take the decision. So that balance will change with the asset management plans. So again, this time moving out 1 year short of the 35, 36, but to 34, 35, the balance will be quite different across the classes. And just to clarify, when I'm talking ICT, I'm talking both CapEx and operating expenditure because software as a service accounting treatment means that some of the capital-like spend on ICT is actually occurring in the operating statement. But at the end of year 34, 35, we expect to have 27% on fleet, 4% on equipment, 16% on ICT, and 53% on property. But for each year going through to 2034-35, the percentages will differ because they're determined by the asset management plans going forward.
That's very sensible. That's an enormous amount on property compared.
It is, and we do have some real challenges in property.
I think it'd be certainly be good to understand that all better, but Madam Chair, I'm sure you want to carry on focusing specifically.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. And can I move to Lamonga now? Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I probably will just suck mine on to the last group of questions around the type 3s. What I wanted to understand was, does the CE believe that with more rigour that you've got the percentages right? Because I'm just referring to documents that have been filed. I think it's paragraphs, I've got here 520, 521, 22, 23. And it's more about the body cracking issues impact on service and ongoing remediation. What I'd like to ask FENZ is the planning moving forward and going on what you've just explained to Andy's question, do you have the percentages right? Have you got the appropriate understandings of the fire type 3s fit for purpose? And will that be suitable in terms of the fleet management going forward for the next decade? Because you've talked about a decade, but then you've also talked about a 5-year plan with the opening comments of the chair.
The question's directed to me. I think yes. I believe that the settings are right, and we are needing to balance across the asset portfolio. The movement from one part of the asset portfolio to another creates pressures in that area as well, just like any organisation, and making sure we've got those settings wrong. But I think the asset management plans clearly give us a detailed plan of where the investment needs will be going forward through the next 10 years. Like I said earlier on, that will be informed as the work from FOC develops, to actually have a clearer picture of the operational needs and requirements and the changing needs of those, and sitting across the fleet strategy once we're able to pull that together.
My other question is with regards to, thank you for that, is around the cracking. So we'd seen quite recently that there was a whole fleet of fire engines that were brought into the assets. I visited in Hamilton where they got 2 specific new fire trucks, but one was on the road for 1 day. So how does the board, how does the executive team explain when you've got a promise of all these new fire trucks and you've done all the data behind it, etc.? Will there be the guarantee that when you do get new fleet, that it will service and it won't have all of these problems that you've had and that have been listed?
Yeah, thank you. It's really important in an organisation that has critical gear like ours, like the critical fleet, that when things are identified as not 100%, that we actually take a deliberate decision to ensure that we understand what the problem is, we rectify the problem, and then we put it back into order. So, that is the right thing to do, rather than leave them on the run until, potentially they fail there. So when we're talking about the appliances that were put onto the run and then we took them off the run again, that was a deliberate and erring on the side of caution decision to remove them, to ensure that we can address any issues that come out of them, to make sure that they're going to be resilient and safe for our people to operate in. It's really tempting to get pressured by public timelines that we've committed to publicly, but we need to make sure, for the sake of our firefighters, that our appliances are robust and ready to operate when they go onto the run. So it was a deliberate decision to move that. It was a deliberate decision on the side of caution, and it is about understanding what the problems are or what the issues are, finding the rectification for that, testing those, and then putting them back into service.
Thank you, Tim.
So I just want to come back to this selection of Anglico. 5.27b, it is the one I was looking for before, where it says one prototype appliance was designed and built by Anglico. The build of this appliance was commenced around June 2021.
That just can't be correct, because on paragraph 5.59, we shipped a chassis to Anglico in late 2021. I don't equate that with June 2021.
Okay, so it's probably just wrong. Okay, so I guess the questions are, because SEM, we understand you're doing some work with them to try and fix tranche one. They effectively never come through with anything, right? Because their trial appliance doesn't even turn up. And then, so yeah, okay. And the solution produced by Fraser Fire and Rescue ultimately fixes tranche one? That has worked out, or is it the one by the other local manufacturer that's referred to?
Oh, the rectification of the cracking.
Yeah, the physical rectification was done by Fraser Fire and Rescue, is that correct?
It's my understanding.
Yeah, okay. So SEM, worth a go, didn't work out. We've gone with Anglico, who are also in the middle of the next generation project at the time, and are one of the two suppliers that are shortlisted for that. But the other one, Emergency One, aren't invited. And in paragraph 560, you talk about, in undertaking this procurement process, FENZ recognise the importance of maintaining separation from the ongoing next generation type 3 procurement focus. No other suppliers from next generation were asked to submit a proposal. So tell me if I'm understanding this correctly. You're saying, hey, we've got this next generation thing, so we're not going to invite Emergency One or anyone else that is tendered for next generation, because we want some distance between the two. And yet at the same time, you've got Anglico, who are the only other successful supplier, that are now getting, even if we take that June date as correct, they cold call you in July. In September, there's a trial appliance accepted in September, and a cab sent to the UK. And then they get in the contract signed before testing's done. It looks like, I can understand why people are raising concerns. It looks like someone maybe through next generation has got a nice relationship with Anglico and is going, well, let's these guys are good, we'll just get them in because we haven't gone to anyone else. Can you help us to understand how the thinking and arriving at that decision?
So my review of the documentation around Anglico at this time was that Anglico, in undertaking their due diligence for the next generation proposal, came across the tranche 1 47-man appliance cracking issue through their due diligence search, and as a result of that, proactively reached out to Fire and Emergency and said we think we can design a body build that will work on the man chassis. So that's my understanding from the documentation I reviewed.
Okay. So of the 28, we know that 16 have arrived and have been accepted. The other 12, is the issue mechanical? Is it contractual? What's happened to the other 12?
The other 12 that we're still waiting to receive.
Yes, is the delay commercial or mechanical with those?
We're working proactively with Anglico around the next steps on those and where we're likely to procure. Part of that will be a staged implementation of those. So
Are they built yet?
they're in New Zealand, those 12.
So why, yeah, so that's my question is what is the issue with them? Is it a mechanical, is it they haven't fixed the RFI or there's a deck monitor issue, or is it a contractual hold up with Anglico, which is stopping them being released into your acceptance?
There's a whole range of elements that sit in there, a little bit of all of them that sit in there. And we want to make sure, you know, when we accept those, that the things that we've discovered through the initial ones that came on have been rectified through the 12 before we accept them coming into the.
So is it FENZ, is it FENZ saying we're not willing to accept them yet? Or is it Anglico saying you can't have them yet?
We're in discussions with them from a commercial sense around those. I mean, certainly it's not something that I'm willing to go into in a public forum, but if the committee wish to separate that, we can go into some of the negotiations we're having there.
Yeah, I'd be interested. Obviously, we can't do that now while we're in public. It's deeper than the RFI issue. Is the RFI issue been resolved? Because in the information you've given, I've said the RFI issue was found obviously after you signed the contract for the 28 because we hadn't done the testing, but then when you did do the testing, you found the RFI issue, which as I look at it is just on the A range, the FM frequency, not the UHF or the VHF. It's and it needed a bespoke solution that had to be done in the UK. And yet we've got 16 of them, or 28 of them in the country, but 16 that have been accepted in New Zealand that haven't had that resolved. One of the documents said it was 18 months away to fix. I'm just trying to understand where that's at.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My understanding is that the RFI issue has been resolved for the the first 17. Is my understanding.
But that 17th is the trial one, and that's not in use yet, is it? Is it just the 16 that have come on, or is the trial appliance also been accepted?
I'm just going to refer to my notes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Either control. It's a green sheet, so.
So if I refer you to the green sheet,
Yes.
if we go down the bottom, there's the MAN Anglico Type 3 prototype.
Right.
If you have a look at the reason for current, the outstanding issues.
Okay, so the RFI one is imminently to be resolved.
I can't see anything outstanding in that list that refers to RFI.
Yeah, what I read from your report was that you're tracking for maybe September this year was the best case, that it took 5.74D said it was going to take, it took 18 months to resolve that issue. And maybe September this year to have that, but the trucks could come on in the meantime. But I think you've got is it the high pressure deliveries creating some issues?
I think it's best if we come back to that so that we don't mislead the committee at all around the RFI issue.
Okay.
Okay, now Mike has us up on this.
Thank you. Just curious, like this is obviously quite an extended time period this is rolled out over. And trying to work out what was happening between, I guess, the board and the CE and the communication back and forth. What type of instructions were you getting from the board or direction from the board as this was unrolling?
The board was certainly mindful of the time that it was taken and looking to ensure that we were expediting the process as quickly as possible. But they also understood some of the challenges that we were going through as far as what we've articulated through the submission.
Were they supportive of what was happening, what you were doing?
Certainly the board were, like I was, frustrated at the length of time that this was taken and the impact that this has on our current fleet. And there was a real strong focus on how do we make sure that we can expedite the process as fast as we could through there. But a big sense of frustration at the time. And like I said, the tail of this goes a long way back, and we're dealing with the decisions and things that were made where, in hindsight, if more rigour had been put across by the organisation, that we may not have the same challenges that we're having now with those.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious, like, it has dragged on for a long, long time, and it seems to be issue after the issue, and I'm just trying to work out between, I guess, management and the board, like what actions, I guess, we're getting, I guess, put to the management from the board to ensure things could actually move forward at a better pace, I guess, or to a point that actually you will get in these appliances into received and actually operational. And so I'm just struggling to work out what was happening between the board and management over that period of time.
And there was, like I said, there were certainly discussions and direction to me around the need to expedite the process as much as we can, but also awareness that we need to ensure that we get these appliances right.
Where do you think the accountability falls for these errors?
I think ultimately, these fall back to, the initial rigour that was put around the process. Like the genesis of this goes right back to 2014, when the initial cab and chassis design was put in place, and which obviously over the period of time we saw the body build on those cracking. But that goes right back to those early times. So I think.
Do you not think as the CEO some of that falls onto you though, the accountability of?
I think my role is to ensure that we deal with those issues as they come through appropriately, and that we have an eye on and continuous improvement and making sure that we can rectify the challenges that we see as we experience.
Okay, that brings us to the end of that block, but it may be that we come back to because this seems to be the main area, but we are moving now on, as our schedule says, to aerial appliances. So I'm just going to check if you had anything to say about that first. I don't think you ever thought Kerry, you're okay to go straight to questions?
Yes, I was just going to say that, the aerials are a critical specialty capability, and that, when there's local outages, when they occur, that they shouldn't be dismissed. But also the national network and the relief appliances, they're a mitigation. They're not the solution. They're a mitigation that sits in there that the organisation applies. But we are running a balance of, internationally, all fire services have the same challenge around you can't have every resource in every station across the country, and what's the right balance in our settings.
Thank you, and I'll start with Tim.
Thank you. So I've got this right. There's 4 Type 5s and 1 Type 6 on order. When are they due for delivery?
Thank you. So we have them scheduled at the moment, delivered in the Q3 of 26-27. That means they'll go through the green process of acceptance testing,
Sure.
etc.
So they'll start that acceptance testing early next year. Is that okay? So in July 2025, the asset management plan says that the aerial appliances have had their final inspections completed, and when shipped to New Zealand, Fire Emergency will take ownership of them. Is that correct?
So we have yet to complete the final operational inspections. So there's different inspections along the contractual dates. And as you progress through the build, you do inspections of the build to date, similar to if you were building a house. I imagine that's a good correlation.
Yes.
And there's some inspections scheduled in Brisbane for the 5 heavy and the 6. That's coming up over the next 2 months to 2 months.
Okay, but it does say in your asset management plan, and I'm in the details here, but it's footnote 39 on page 42, and it says these appliances have had their final inspections completed. And that's after the sentence that says the large type 5 is going to Parnell Station and the type 6 is going to Hamilton. Footnote 39, these have had their final inspections completed. But now you're saying they've still got more inspections to be completed.
Yeah, it's a complex build. So what we've been doing is
There
things.
can only be one final one, can't there?
So the footnote refers to these appliances had their final inspections completed
Yes.
when they are shipped to New Zealand. Fire
Yes.
Emergency will officially take ownership of them. So
Correct, but it does say that they have had, past tense, their final inspections completed, and that document came out in July 2025. So a year ago, they had their final inspections completed. Now we're doing some more inspections.
that's incorrect because before we take ownership of those vehicles, we need to do our final acceptance inspections.
So they hadn't been, had they been built a year ago?
They weren't complete a year ago.
Okay, I feel like you're dancing around that one. Well, let's go back a step. When did the delivery phase begin?
So delivery,
Yes, the
we're
delivery
expecting
phase.
in Q3, 26-27.
Right,
That's on page 81 of your booklet.
okay. If I go to paragraph 719 of your submission for this on aerial appliances, it says in 2024, the project moved into the delivery and design phase. So that's not physical delivery, that's what? That's because, I mean, design phase is pretty fundamentally the start, isn't it?
The design phase is at the start of the process.
Right, so, I mean, it says it moved into the delivery phase, delivery and design phase in 24, so that's not delivery. I'm just trying to work out where it's at because it says the delivery phase started in 24, that says they had their final inspection a year ago. But it also says that in November last year, there are still design changes happening. This, like, we're kind of designing the appliance as we build, like we're already into that delivery phase and we're still making design changes. They'd had their final, is the issue that they'd had their final inspection, but then we changed the design. And so we now have to do changes and now there's more inspections and like, I'm trying to understand what the delay is from a final inspection in a year ago to sitting here today.
Carrying on with that sentence, it talks about at this stage, the steering committee's attention shifted to assuring the appliances would meet fire and emergency operational and regulatory needs in practice. That has certainly been one of the things that's come through around ensuring that we have all those different elements in the procurement around the operational needs, around the technical needs, all aligned as part of the process. So, that is moving forward, getting greater alignment between all the different components to ensure they're in place. But the submission clearly shows there that the attention was shifted to ensuring the appliances and meet the fire emergencies operational needs.
Okay, but I'm still not hearing the reason why, after a final inspection a year ago, they're not ready now, and they're still at least 6 months away from physically arriving and being able to even start acceptance testing, let alone the rest of the process to get out on the run.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about the current status of that?
Sure. So 7.26 and 7.27, I think, tells you the current status. So what you'll find is we've got outstanding issues since November 25 that we're clearing, and we've been using, operational response experts in these vehicles to help in the resolution of those outstanding issues. The final inspection and acceptance has not been completed today.
Okay, so I understand that, but it's not actually telling me anything. What is what has happened? Something has happened since July last year.
Sure. I could give you an example without going into any technical. The weight of vehicles is always a consideration. I know there was a period of time that operational response was asked to see if we could move piping to help alleviate that issue. I had the expert aerial trainers consult on that, and we decided that they couldn't be, that wasn't a solution. We looked at whether we could reduce equipment. So all of these considerations are done with operations to help resolve an issue that's been identified during the build. That's just one example for you.
Can I just ask my acting DCE for assets to come forward to the table too? Might
Absolutely.
be able to get into quite some detail. Might be able to have a little bit
absolutely.
more detail.
And while you're coming forward, Andy or Lamonga, are yours subs or primaries? Are they subs?
Well, it depends. I mean, Tim's going well into procurement issues, so on that basis, I
You
could
want to
probably
do
say
that
yes.
too? Fair enough.
Well, might as well. I mean, you just said we'd leave procurement
So
to the end, but we're not.
I'll come to you soon.
Okay.
You. Sorry. Go for it.
Did you have anything to add on the aerials?
No, I mean, I think just picking up on Megan's point, I mean, issues such as weight and kind of configuration kind of considerations has added a delay. I think in terms of looking to the submission where it refers to the move into delivery and design phase, perhaps unhelpful in here, but it's kind of like project management language. It wasn't merely delivery, like physically handing over, sort of as of today, 3 of the type 5, so the type 5 mediums are with Fraser Fire Rescue, where they're working on their work program. We have 1 type 5 heavy and a type 6 with the producer over in Australia. So they are all still with the the builders.
But are we having a commercial issue where, I don't know, FENZ won't pay whoever the contract's with overseas and they're not paying a subcontractor and therefore someone's holding something back? Are there those kind of issues that are delaying this?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've literally stepped into the role. This is my kind of first weekend, so we need to.
Are there commercial issues that are holding this up?
One of the changes in the process with the aerials was having a turnkey approach, well, not turnkey, but having a single contractor manage the contract. Certainly, we're managing those contracts carefully. And again, I'm happy to talk to the committee in a closed thing around.
Okay.
That's all I've got on the type
Thank
5,
you,
6.
Mike.
Thank you. Just wondering, like currently, and I think you touched on it at the very start of this session around the type 5, type 6, and there's roughly 10, is there all up? Is it the same number there was in 2017?
So we've got one. Yeah, sure. Thank you. I would have to go back and verify the number at 2017, but we've currently got 6 type 5 and 4 type 6.
Yeah. Okay. Then I guess my question is because obviously since 2017 there's been a lot of growth in New Zealand. Are you certain that number's an appropriate number? now in 2026? And, should it be actually higher than that?
I think the work that we're doing in FOC is going to really define that. I need it to be data-driven and evidence-based to actually verify where we should have those resources. We have an inherited layout of fleet, and I think it's the right time for us to review that and see that we do have the right mix of appliance types.
Okay, so I guess when you haven't done that work, there's potential issues with your budgeting moving forward, because your budget moving forward is just based on the exact same number, is it?
The asset management plans are based on a like for like. Yes.
So there could be, although you're saying that at the moment you've got $154 million gap, it could be a lot more, considering actually you haven't reviewed if you have the right number of appliances across the country.
It could be more, it could be less. Like Megan said, it's actually looking at what that work produces so that we've got an accurate picture of it rather than speculating against it. But the asset management plans are based on a like for like.
Last question, I just noticed on the type forwards, there's 19. And there's only 2 relief type forwards. Is that an issue with only having 2 relief ones? Like a lot of the other ones have, I guess, a bigger percentage of relief. Is there a concern there with having 2 relief type forwards?
I think we have a fleet that we've inherited. I think the Type 4 project is underway. I think some of the Type 4s are sitting in locations where they're not used a lot. Ideally, you probably want to look at the mix when we look at the whole fleet. But it currently is the fleet that we have.
Okay, thank you. Lamonga.
Thank you. Mike asked one of my questions, so I'll go straight into it. In terms of to FENZ, in terms of procurement, design, operational requirements and regulatory constraints, do you think you've got a current stock? Do you think moving forward, even in your 5-year plan, that you have got ample supply of the aerial appliances, given that there's urban sprawl and that continues in terms of housing and communities, etc., and also the type? Is there a conversation that continues with the likes of, i.e. local councils? Because what we've heard on the ground and what I've heard in urban is that some of the appliances, and I'm looking at the aerials that you've currently got, actually can't get into some of the streets given the urban sprawl. So given that Mike's asked an earlier question of my questions, can you comment on that?
I think that's a really good question. And, it's one of the importance of having that, both the future operating capability, but also the fleet strategy to allow those things to be taken into account, because if we were to buy a whole lot more aerial appliances and then find that we couldn't deploy them operationally because of the constraints of the size of streets and access, well then, we've defeated the purpose. So it's, there's a number of different components that need to come into that wider piece of thinking as to how we deploy our different tactical approaches. And what does that mean for our current like-for-like stock? Do we need to make changes in there? There's some of the questions that we'll need to grapple with as an organisation when we have a better idea of all of the different drivers that will drive our capability going forward.
And just quickly, is your rigor the capabilities? I mean, are you getting that information fed into your system so that you can pivot when you have to, because you've got budgetary constraints, budgetary requirements, you are planning, trying to plan a year ahead so that you've got the correct amount of fleet to respond to the emergencies that are being brought forward on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's certainly the value of the network of approaches. So at any given time, making sure that we can provide an appropriate response. And that doesn't mean we'll always have the desired resource that we'd always want. If we have multiple fires at the same time, can't split a trucks, especially specialist trucks like aerial and two, to be at two different positions. So, you know, there's a balance of how much risk we can afford and carry as an organisation when appliances are deployed. But the network approach allows us to respond appropriately to the different calls of service that we have across New Zealand.
Thank you.
Thank you. And coming to you, Andy.
Yeah, thank you. Look, just wanted to check first of all, because you've used different terminologies in different places. You've got, as I understand it, 28 type 4, 5, 6 vehicles. That's according to your asset management plan.
Uh, 29 in the inquiry submission in May.
Okay, that's close enough anyway. 20. Let's stick with 29 then. How many have you replaced? Because you've used different terminology about special vehicles and so on. How many have you replaced in the, you know, the decade that, or almost decade that FENZ has been operating?
No.
Of the aerials,
Yeah.
none at this point.
Okay, right, cool. What I wanted to ask you then is, because I can see them aging, but what I wanted to ask you then is your process of procuring replacements for these. Ravine, when you started the conversation, you talked about turnkey rather than, you know, sort of specialist design of everything, which we seem to do quite a lot of in New Zealand. But I'm conscious that there's certain circumstances too that you're talking about with, you know, street environments, which may be difficult for, you know, for these large vehicles to go down. To what degree can you do these things as turnkey, as opposed to having to, you know, have specialist designs for different circumstances? No, if I just off the one other thing, do you get any input? Because most of the time in smaller streets, mostly I would think they're going to be smaller buildings as well. But they may not always be true where you wouldn't need the aerial appliances. But to what degree is that an issue?
Are you, excuse me, you're seeking that response from Kerry?
Well, I think Ravine, you made the comment about trying to buy things that are more turnkey, and it seems that one of the complexities we've had in this whole fleet procurement process is it feels like lots of things are being designed, you know, specifically for New Zealand circumstances. And I just really wanted to understand why we have to do that differently than anywhere else, why our environment is different to anybody else's anywhere else on the planet. And we make life difficult for ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, that was a very good question. So my response, I apologize, but my response will be based on my personal experience rather than from FENZ, because I haven't got the background. But I mean, generally, you know, you start off by saying, well, others have fire appliances. You know, they have fire appliances in Australia. You know, they're just next door. You know. So why is it that we can't just go and buy one of those or something similar? That is the sort of the starting point. Why
we tend to do that for cars anyway. I know that it's much simpler, but yeah.
Yes. But I think the overall response would be that we want fit for purpose equipment that we can get hold of as quickly as possible, so that we are not solving one unacceptable situation by creating another one, which is what we've done here. So we should be looking at our procurement and contractual approaches that will give us the outcome in the time frame that we're seeking, with the confidence that we're seeking, and within the budgets that we're seeking. Now, none of those are true here. So unfortunately, this is not an acceptable situation we found ourselves in. But to respond to your question, there would be certain things that are peculiar. So I know from my other experiences that more and more developers are building their subdivision where they do not have to novate the road network to the council, because the council roading agency wouldn't accept it because it's not of the right width. And therefore, and similarly, the water entity, and I'm talking about Auckland Council here, would not accept a public fire hydrant in a private road. So you have these new scenarios that are being created. So those roadways are narrow. So they're narrow for rubbish trucks. They're narrow for firefighting trucks to get through. Then you can look for other means of getting the same resilience, because you want to save lives. And is it that these dwellings need to have sprinklers because the firefighters wouldn't be able to get there? So there's a broader approach to how do we save lives, at the same time increase resilience of communities, would be my approach. As I said, this is my thinking, but I can respond on behalf of FENZ at this point in time.
So thanks, Raveen. From the Kerry and your team, can you give us a bit of a steer on that as well? Because it seems disturbing that if we are doing developments in a way, and if that is the driver, and we're allowing developments to occur which are, basically trying to do things on the cheap, somebody else is picking up the tab, and in this case, it's you.
Yeah, thank you. And there is a number of components that sit in there. There's a balance between operational requirements, and which sometimes can drive bespoke things for our designs across New Zealand. And it's not to say that's right or wrong, but there's a balance between that and buying off-the-shelf appliances. Things like axle weights, the way that other fire services operate them are all considerations in just being able to go and buy an off-the-shelf appliance that need to be weighed up, because that then balances against how do our firefighters actually use the appliances in the way that they use them here, and how do we train them to operate differently. But every time we put more bespoke design elements into an appliance, what it creates is it creates more risk that we're the first time that those appliances are being tested and tested as a whole system, that they actually work and won't fail. So we need to work through those issues as we bring them on board to make sure all those things are ironed out. So the approach of looking to how can we move to a more turnkey type solution, and what's the balance of that we lose as far as functionality and the way that we operate, is certainly part of the consideration going forward around our procurement. And that is, like I said before, how do we make sure that operational requirements are really aligned closely with the technical requirements and what's on the market as part of those procurement approaches.
If I can just finish off that area, Chair, because it feels like you've got effectively two objectives which are in conflict. One is the fit for purpose, which may have some variation, between a New Zealand environment and somewhere else. And opposed to that is the, being able to get things on time. Now, quite clearly, you're way behind on procurement of these as well. You should have replaced about 9 of them, give or take. About 15 of them, give or take, and you've replaced none in the period that FENZ has been operating. And clearly the bespoke elements are causing you difficulties of actually getting these vehicles, not just these ones, but all of them, commissioned. I've got no idea how many people or different companies manufacture fire appliances around the world, but is there nobody who, I'm getting a feeling that there's nobody who is building fire engines which are acceptable. That doesn't mean you've tinkered with everything under the sun, but they're acceptable and will do the job in New Zealand conditions. So you can actually A, buy them, and B, get them on on New Zealand roads and streets at a much greater rate than you're quite self-evidently managing to deliver.
If I just look on your point around that, if I look at the type 1 and type 2 procurements, they've been relatively seamless in the procurement of those, and the responses from our people around the country is that it does fit those operational needs, and we've got a repeatable procurement process and design that can be rolled out and deployed through there. The issue we have with the type 3 is, being able to define a repeatable design that will work for us, that is, not as bespoke as it's sometimes been in the past, but very much, you know, the simpler we can make that, the less challenges we'll have with our procurement, and the faster that we'll be able to deliver those. But there are different requirements around the world to, you know, to roading conditions and all those sort of things that mean there's not, to my knowledge anyway, one type of appliance that suits all environments. I mean, some of those roads in Europe, for instance, you know, they're tiny, they're small, and their appliances are quite, in some parts, you know, really small in the way that they operate through there.
Right, way
Yeah.
smaller than ours.
We need to keep moving because we're running a bit behind. Sorry, I'm just going to move. Tim's got one
Quick type 4
quick
question, because you've said your overall area availability is 99.72%. Does that include when someone like Palmy get their type 4 called out? And if it's not serviceable, I understand they take that call sign, let's say it's 214, and then just annotate a note, no ladder, and they respond in a type 3. Would that still indicate that a 214 has responded, therefore an aerial has responded?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that question. What we do is we actually change the call sign, so we know it's not a type 4. So for example, it might be 214 is taken offline, and we put a type 3 pumper in its place, and it's called a 213, indicating it's a type 3. In that example, that type 3 will have our 464 ladder on it, which has a reach of about 14 metres. That's replacing the 17 metres on the type 4, and it gives a good capability. So both the type 4...
But would that indicate there's a aerial available in terms of your 99.72%?
213 actually is telling everyone it's a type 3.
Yeah, so that won't be included in the 99.72% of aerial availability if it's a 213 with the special ladder?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Well, you're saying that 99.72% of the time you've had aerials available.
Could you refer me to your page, please?
Yeah, page 22, paragraph 2.55. You said 246 mechanical issues while appliances responded to 88,000 incidents, 98 breakdown from alert to arrival, and therefore 99.72% availability.
So that's while responding. So it will be...
Yeah, so if it's never going to respond and you're going to take 213 instead, it won't indicate the fact that it's not capturing that, is it, that data?
No, because it's not on
Because
the
it's never
run, so to
available,
speak.
right? So they never get captured. So therefore, it doesn't actually pick up the times that the aerial is available. Like I think there's no South Island relief type 4 at the moment because it's the one in Palmy. But it won't capture that, will it? Because it never responds because it was never there to start with.
It would be captured in vehicles that are off the run for maintenance.
It will, but it won't be captured
In
the
those figures.
availability
In those figures,
statistic.
no.
Correct.
Right, so 99.72 might be a bit generous if we were to think about what's available for the run rather than what's available during the response.
Okay, we are running a little bit late, and I do want to give people a 5-minute break at least. So I'm giving you that break now, and we'll start back here at 12:30 on that clock. So if you have a look at that, I think it's running a bit fast or slow. Sorry. Sorry for you people. I think it's about 1.5 minutes, isn't it? No, it's
You've got
bang
5
on here. You've got 5 minutes. So my clock says 2:26. We're now moving to other appliances, including type 1, type 2, rural, white fleet and brigade owned. Was there anything that you wanted to start with? No, ready to go. Tim.
Can I just ask about the weight issue? Because this applies to the white fleet. I've heard examples from white fleet, your lines rescue guys hitting weight issues when they're in a fully loaded 4x4, but you've also referred to it in terms of aerial appliances. And I think, yeah, type 3, which only just made the weight limit, was it on the rear axle, but it wasn't fully loaded. Have you formally requested an exemption to axle weight limits from NZTA?
On our white fleet?
Across the board, on wherever it's needed, you know, particularly, you've said it's an issue for your heavy appliances as well.
Jim, do you want to talk to her about that?
Yeah, So in the past, we have on a case-by-case basis approached for exemptions with regards to the aerials. For the type 6, the supplier is managing that process both in terms of dimensions and also the weight. That's part of their contract arrangement. We're going to be picking up the responsibility for what we call the type 5 heavy. We're in the process at the moment of engaging a third party to assist us with all our weight exemption application processes.
Because, I mean, I heard examples in Auckland of one of the aerials having to refuel to get to the Warkworth fire just because to stay within weight limits. Maybe carrying 150 instead of 400 litres in the reservoir that they might carry because of weight limits. Like I just wrote to the minister straight away and said, hey, can't we just give them a blanket exemption? There's one for concrete trucks, there's one for cranes. Surely we want to give one to our first responders. Have you just asked? Wouldn't that fix it? And therefore enable some of these trucks as well that are coming off the shelf to just roll out? Have we? All I'm wondering is, have you asked NZTA? And if not, can we?
I was going to say, I mean, I know historically there's been some case-by-case applications.
The scope had one, didn't it?
But
A blanket exemption, the old scope.
I couldn't tell you.
Pretty sure it did.
Yeah,
Scope in Auckland.
yeah.
But we have engaged, sorry, I can't say we are engaging. We've spoken to, we haven't yet finalised the contract, a third party to act on our behalf to support us, because that's their kind of.
You can't just go straight to NZTA and say, please, can we have an exemption?
We certainly will engage directly with them, but we also want to bring in technical expertise of somebody who, this is what they do. They work with other industries
Okay.
to do those blanket applications.
I'd be really,
There's no reluctance to ask for an exemption should we need an exemption.
okay.
Keep going. Oh, you've
No,
got one on
if you
there.
want to take it,
I can jump in.
get off your back.
Just want to question around, actually type 1. Is there like a target average age that you want to achieve across the fleet of type 1s?
Yes, it's 25 years.
But like, if you have a whole fleet, what's your average age target, I guess?
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, we're focused on and actually getting our entire fleet within the average ages, within the averages for 20 years for the type 3s and 25 years for the type 1s and 2s. And that's basically on the frequency of use or the workload that they put under the difference between the two age groups.
So if I take that, then you'd want 100% of type 1s to be within that 25-year age.
That's certainly our aspiration.
And so currently, I'm just looking at the asset management plan, there's 61% with the average age of 18. So it's obviously there's still a significant amount that's not within that 100%. So I'm just wondering, like, the focus was for the first 9 years was on type 1 for one of the appliances, and we're still quite far off that. Why are we so far away when that was one of the focuses? And at the beginning of the session, you said like the main issue was type 3. Basically, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for type 3. This inquiry wouldn't be happening. But there's still other issues here, right? When you look at this, I'm just wondering, if there's all the investment was put into these spaces, why are we still at 61% in that?
And I think if you have a look at the material that was supplied, it shows over that period of time, we've effectively, for those types, maintained that, pretty much maintained the average age of that. And so we haven't been able to materially move that over that period of time. But we've certainly been able to maintain that as we've brought other appliances into the fleet, like the tankers and things that we've purchased in there.
So the intention in the asset management plan is to take the type 1s in particular from 34% outside of target life in 26, 27 through to 17% by 2035, 36. So it won't be, all of the appliances inside target age, but it's essentially halving it from where it will be start of this year. So that's the asset management plan's intent for type 1s. The type 2s will be all of those appliances to 19 inside target life by the end of that 10-year period. or that 9-year period. So that's the plan, asset management plans design.
A quick financial question, and then I just wanted to ask about brigade owned, but I'll give you in your post-hearing questions from the hearing in May, number 9 was around the costs incurred for leased vehicles where they exceed expected or agreed replacement parameters. The 2026 figure is roughly 140K. That's an expense, not a charge, not a rebate. Am I reading that correctly?
So that's it. So it looks like a shared profit loss. So it's a shared profit and maintenance and tyres, so 139.
So is that a rebate or a charge? Does it cost you, or is that money you got back?
So that is, if it's a shared profit loss and it's not in brackets, then it's a shared profit.
So you got that amount of money back off your contract?
Sorry, no, wrong way around, excuse me. That looks like it's a cost, so 140.
Yeah, that's a cost, right?
Yeah,
The year before you got 37,000 back.
Yeah.
And is that just because I noticed that your policy has changed, you've gone from 100,000 or 3 years for replacement to 150,000 in 6 years. 295 of the 580, so about half of your vehicles exceed that policy. That's in questions 2 to 7, it sort of steps us through that, but 9 gives you the cost. So is that because is that an intentional decision to, hey, we better to stretch out these lease vehicles, and yep, they're a bit older and it's going to cost us money on the contract, but it's saving us on a replacement? Or how are we ending up paying 140,000 for exceeding our parameters?
So I don't know everything about the white fleet. What I can say is that during the COVID period, 2020 to 2023, the vehicles were very difficult to procure. So some of those issues occurred because we had long wait times of vehicles. So that's as much as I know.
And I accept that, but that's not the 2026 answer, is it? Which is the standout. That's not going to be a COVID issue.
No, it's not good. No.
Right. Okay, well then maybe just quickly on brigade owned, we had in the submissions, I have got them all there, but we've had some examples of brigades where they had a brigade owned appliance and they're kind of feeling like they have to hide it because they don't want to lose it. They're keeping it effectively as a spare. There's other examples of brigade owned, everything from jet skis for swiftwater rescue, which I think have been told in Waikato they can't use, through to your 4x4s in some remote areas to get into large parks, out onto beaches and stuff. So that sounds quite pragmatic. Where are we at with that? Because when we had the annual review hearing, I know there was a large discussion around jet skis, swiftwater rescue, but are brigades, whether brigade owns something, whether it's an appliance, a jet ski, a buggy, or whatever it might be, are they able to use it, or are they going to have that taken off them? Do they need to be feeling like they need to hide stuff, or like where's the line of pragmatism versus responsibility?
Yeah, so I just start on the jet skis, and it's good to be in a position now where Ngātawahi and Huntly, which were the ones with the jet skis and the boats, have decided to make up a separate entity. So a local solution to a local issue that sits in there. But on the wider scale of that, when we're talking about different capabilities and when we're talking about assets coming in, we are talking about different capabilities being brought into fire and emergency. We need to ensure that those vehicles, if we're deploying them, are actually safe to be deployed. We need to make sure that they're maintained properly and they're safe for our people to deploy in. So there's no blanket solution to that. It's actually on a case-by-case basis on what the assets are and how we'll deploy them, which is managed through the regions at the moment around what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that brings us to the end of that section, which we thought would be a shorter section. So we're now moving on to procurement and maintenance. So I'm just wondering if you've got anything that you wanted to say first?
Well, just an opening saying, we've certainly recognised that in the past there's been some inconsistency in some of the procurement documentation in particular, but processes. We've been on a procurement improvement roadmap that we've been applying over a number of years now. So making some good steps forward through there. But it's certainly an area that when we look back at the some of the procurement decisions in the past could have been more robust through there.
Okay, thank you. And I think, Tim, I'm looking
Sure.
to you first
Okay.
at the moment.
You just mentioned the roadmap. That was part of the procurement improvement program.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Which was complete, the roadmap was completed in 2025? Is that right? But as part of that, you also implemented a new procurement operating model,
Correct,
and that was in 2022.
correct,
So that was right at the start of that 4-year improvement plan,
correct,
before you even had the roadmap.
correct.
And effectively, am I right in reading from your submission, it didn't work?
Correct. Correct.
So you implemented the solution at the start of it, before you had the roadmap and knew what it looked like. And now we've effectively got rid of that new model and we've gone back to business units with the central procurement supply team.
Correct.
It feels like another example of sort of reactionary decision making. Something's gone wrong, let's try this new procurement thing, and now, oh crap, that one hasn't worked either. We're going to have to try something else.
Yes, so we did seek advice on what would be the most effective procurement structure for fire and emergency in 2022, expert advice, and follow that expert advice in the design of that procurement team. And it's fair to say that we implemented that structure.
Yep.
And it did not work. And so in 2023, 2024, we said this does not seem to be serving the organisation well. We need to have the courage to have another look at that procurement structure and change it, and that's what we did. The roadmap and the change in structure occurred together as a way of attempting to really improve our procurement performance. And the roadmap was completed alongside the new structure of the team.
So I don't mind the fact that you're willing to acknowledge, it's good to hear that you're willing to acknowledge, hey, this hasn't worked, we need to go back. I guess it's the decision to go there at the start. If I read some of the things from your submission, good faith decisions have often prioritised practical outcomes and operational needs, sometimes ahead of best practice processes. Look, I won't go through it all, but I guess the point is we see in a lot of this, there's a lot focused on process and not enough focus on production, right? Like there's lots of compliance but this is about outcomes, right? This is about actually getting appliances on the run. So have we got caught up in the process and what the operating model is and all of this stuff?
And not from my perspective, there's a lot of pressure on our procurement performance in 2022, and this committee was also involved in that process. And we were genuinely trying not to follow an operating model, but really to try and say, how do we structure our procurement function so that it serves the organisation well? We went and looked at other, crown entities and government departments. What do they do in their procurement function? What can we learn from that? And that's how we structured the approach going forward. But it's very fair to say that that did not serve the organisation well. So I wouldn't characterise it as, been overtaken by operating models or anything like that, but really trying to get a structure that would serve the organisation well.
It would appear, looking back in reflection of that, the organisation wasn't ready for the maturity, or didn't have the maturity for the model of procurement that was put in place initially. Once that was recognised, that's why it wasn't working. That's when the decision was made, well, how do we do this different so we can have a more progressive improvement towards where we need to be with improvement.
And you said you looked at other government agencies, like I'm thinking about NZPFU that took 6 of those 36-man chassis. They took them to Fraser Fire, who built your Tranche 1 body, and they had them in service by 2024. We didn't even have a functioning, well, we tested one prototype at that point, but it wasn't in use, and they had them in use. They've got a replacement plan. They know that in 2041 they start the next plan for the next round. Like, I'm trying to work out how they can execute it with the exact same chassis that came off the boat that FENZ have got. And I mean, can we, I don't know, should we be working with them in terms of what their procurement team are doing? Because it's obviously worked.
So my understanding of that time is that the defence procurement was through our process, so they were part of the same order that we put through for that.
For the chassis.
And 6 of those went through to the chassis.
But then they got a body built on them and got them introduced into service by 2024, and we didn't even have a functioning one in the country at that point.
And ultimately, the delay in ours was caused by the cracking that came through.
But that was tranche 1, but tranche 2, we're talking tranche 2 here, with the 6 NZDF were from tranche 2. You had 30, they had 6. They had those 6 built up by 2024 and in operational service regularly and have been ever since. Your records say that at that point you had 28 in the UK, still not in service. You had 1 with SEM that hadn't come back. You had 1 with Anglico that had come back, been tested, but quote, sat in the workshops ever since. My point is really that it's not just about the physical appliance, it's about the capability that we're introducing.
Yeah.
And do they have something more robust? Or when you've looked at other government departments, I pick on NZDF because they took 6 of your 36. Is there someone that's got that can actually just focus? So you don't have to focus on the process, you just focus on the product and get it onto the run.
It's a fair observation.
But we haven't done any. I thought you'd say, yes, we've done lots of thinking about this and here's what we want, or here's why we can't do it through defence because of X, Y, Z, but.
Well, I think if you look at, again, at the procurement of the type 1s and 2s, that's been a successful procurement process that's gone through there. So the type 3s is being complicated by the tail of the legacy challenges that are sat there. So that is the complication that's sat there. But the whole procurement process hasn't demonstrated as being broken because we have had those successes. What it is lifting up to actually say, what are the things that have gone right and how do we make sure that we can do that as a systemic approach to how we deliver procurement for appliances.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, I'll say this and then I'll shut up. But it just seems to me that there's a lot of focus on processes. There's lots of layers of documentation. I made this point before. There's a lot of talk about business units and our business foundations, and that's what covers off fleet as a strategic priority. But we're not a business. You're operational service, and it seems that we could just go and get. And I like the fact you're talking about turnkey, but an 80% solution that's available 100% of the time sounds a lot better to me than a 100% solution that is not available because. In your quotes around your aerial appliances, design changes taking place all the way through, including in the delivery phase, the constant changes, still changes happening with Anglico in terms of the latest type 3, engineering and re-engineering, and it just seems we need to get, as Mr. Foster said earlier, 10 a year onto the run every year forever, and if we could move away from being hampered by process and focused on outputs and production alone, and accepting that 80% solution. Anyway.
Okay, thank you, Lamonga.
Thank you. Probably more sup now, but following on from Tim's questioning, in terms of the planning ahead 5 years, so you've taken us through the process in terms of today's agenda. How confident will you be in terms of moving forward to your 5-year plan that you've got the procurement strategy because you've changed the pace in the last few years and now you've had some success as you're building the procurement model to be more efficient? In the next couple of years, how will you be on budget and will you be able to produce what you're after?
But I think what we're building there, we've got better documentation, better record keeping, better compliance, and certainly applying stronger contract management across those to actually ensure that those procurements are successful. So that gives me the confidence that as an organisation we're learning, we're applying those learnings to make sure that we can be successful across the different procurement aspects.
And will 80%, or is there a large percentage of that will be on some sort of digital platform that is available nationwide for your firehouses and your fire stations, given that there has been, in the past in some of the hearings, we've heard that there's quite the manual system but obviously moving to AI and digital systems so that you've got a good solution for the right fit. Are you confident that the planning instruments that you have are on the right track and that you will able to deliver?
I think one of the things that's been missing in the past has been the transparency and transparency internally, so that our people can see what the procurement pathway and plan is. Not everyone will always be happy with the plan, but certainly when people can't see the picture, it becomes very frustrating around understanding why decisions are made and how decisions are made. So that greater transparency, I think, will certainly help the organisation and our firefighters in particular, who get frustrated when things go wrong, have a greater sense of confidence in not only what's happening and when it's going to happen, but actually why it's going to happen as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Andy.
Yeah, thank you. And if the host can get my video working again, that'd be very helpful too, because I can't do it from this end. Hopefully that'll work now. Yeah, brilliant.
There you go.
Excellent. Thank you. Look, what I wanted to ask was, Tim mentioned Fraser, who just around the corner in the Hutt Valley. You keep on talking about international delivery arrangements. I mean, is there any? We kind of like things being built in New Zealand as a party philosophy. Is there any particular reason that you're not using them? I mean, as he said, if NZPFU have been using them, got them on the road and operating very, very quickly, and you still haven't managed it. Was there some reason that don't seem to be particularly keen on them?
It's not that we're not particularly keen on, and I certainly acknowledge and note the changes in the procurement guidelines around the weighting around New Zealand procurement that sits in there, and we'll certainly be applying that as part of our process going forward. But we have followed the procurement guidelines as part of that process.
So obviously, in your view, that meant that they weren't competitive at that point in time. So you were getting a better arrangement somewhere else. But you're not actually getting the engines on the road, which is slightly problematic.
Again, with the Type 3s, if you look at the Type 3s, some of those delays have been very frustrating, and also came from a varying number of reasons. But as far as getting appliance on the road, again, say across the range of types that we've procured, there has been successes that have sat through there as well on some of them, but not the Type 3s.
I guess, I mean, you gave us the defence that you've managed to procure Type 1s and 2s, but struggled with the rest. I mean, that's a little bit like the All Blacks turning up and said we played one game well, and then we did a lousy job the next time, and expect people to be satisfied with it.
Well, I think we've been dissatisfied with the Type 3s rather than the rest, and I think that is why the focus is on how do we deal with the legacy, what does it look like for the next generation, and also bringing in a independent advisor that can actually look at our whole end-to-end process. I would be surprised if they come in and they don't find other things that we can improve in them. That's the whole purpose of bringing them in, to give advice to myself, to give advice to the board on the areas that we can really pull through and strengthen across the end-to-end process and how it's aligned. So, that's going to really help us going forward to have a greater confidence that we're going to get the procurement correct going forward.
So if I go back to Type 3s, in the last almost 10 years, you have delivered one a year. You're expecting to deliver roughly 13 per year.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at the performance to date, what's going to give us confidence that you're actually going to be able to do that? Because it's great to have all the, the processes, the plans, and the documentation, everything. But at the moment, the proof's not in the pudding. And and at what point do you actually say, well, we're just not doing this. We're not delivering. Yeah,
and you effectively talking about assurance there. And
well, yeah, I am, because I mean, at what point, if you said you want to deliver 122, that was Type 3s in the next 9 years, you've delivered 10 in the last 9. That's a huge step up. how are we? I mean, I would imagine DIA will be all over you, and the minister will be all over you, making sure that you're actually starting to deliver at a rate which is 13 times or 12 and a bit times what you've been delivering in the last decade.
Yeah, and like I said, to give us that confidence, we're bringing in that independent advisor to actually have a look at that. Audit New Zealand has looked over the way that we've been procuring, especially around the type 1s and 2s, to see that we've got a systemic approach that we can use year on year on year in that. The board chair of 2 weeks has already made it very clear that we need to do better in the area of our fleet, our type 3 and our procurement processes to meet. So the board will be having a very, and I don't speak for the board chair, can speak for himself in that regard, but he's made clear expectations of what he expects coming into the organisation.
I guess, Kerry, I'm not just looking at whether you've got nice, tidy processes, and everybody says, yes, this is a beautiful process. It's it's got all the integrity wrapped around it and all the other sort of things in there.
Yeah.
But I still haven't got any engines. You know, that's ultimately, as Mr. Costley said earlier, you know, we actually want to see new engines replacing old ones which are, you know, now getting out of date.
You know, I mean, I certainly appreciate the frustration, and I have the frustration myself at, you know, being able to get engines on the road for our frontline people, and making sure that they can have what they need, that's not going to break down. And it is about making sure that they're robust and safe. And I can certainly give you our assurance that we're doing best endeavours to actually meet the timelines that we put in place, but also can't anticipate what other challenges or issues will come across that need to be rectified. And what we need to do when we come across those is actually stop, take stock of, and to understand what the problem is and ensure that they're safe and effective for our people. And we'll continue to do that and ensure that we're driving the expediency.
I go back though to 2 other things I'll ask. One is the turnkey versus bespoke approach, and the more that you can make it simple, you're more likely to get it right. And so some confidence around that will be useful. And just the other one is, I mean, are there any lessons that you can pick up from other people? You know, we've already heard NZDF. I'm also aware that all the airports, well, I think all of them around the country, or nearly all of them, certainly maybe the smallest ones don't have them. They've all got fire engines as well. Now, they may be easier, I don't know, they may be easier to procure because, you know, they're there to do one job. But, you know, they seem to be quite good at replacing them on time and on budget, as far as I'm aware, the ones I've seen.
You know, we'll certainly be reaching out to all the different like bodies, including, you know, across Australia, to understand, you know, fully understand how they're operating and whether there's things in there that can actually improve our ability to deliver and get the trucks on the run in a really meaningful time.
Sorry, did you say we will be or we have been?
Well, we have been engaging with different entities across there. And Jim, can you speak to those? Or
yeah, I mean, things I'm just reflecting as we're talking about turnkey solutions and then what other jurisdictions are doing. I think it's an important component here that we're not buying a car from a production line. So even when we say turnkey, every jurisdiction will be different. If you go to the UK, where they have local authorities heavily involved in each kind of fire authority, they have subtle differences for their trucks. Across the different jurisdictions in Australia, they have subtle differences for their trucks. So there's always degrees of variance and change there. We are part of kind of grouping of the Australian states. So we have regular dialogues with different jurisdictions around new capabilities, new approaches. When it comes to actually then going to market, of course, we have to conform to New Zealand procurement rules. And then, frankly, we are competing in a very congested market where there are a small number of providers, and several of those providers are taken up with high funding organisations. So again, when we turn up and we're saying we need to buy call it 10 a year, 2 a year, depending on what the truck type is. Actually, for some of those producers, we're just not actually a customer of choice. And so we're then kind of offsetting what their capacity is to support us. So yeah, we do engage with Australia. We do keep a very close look at what else is happening overseas. And then we feed that into our design planning and our considerations.
You just said you're basically using scale of the organisation as an excuse for why it's difficult. That doesn't seem to have caused any problems for NZPFU, which will be much smaller than you in terms of the number of vehicles they produce, that they require, and airports. I mean, they're buying, you know, even a reasonable sized airport it has, you know, maybe 3. They don't seem to have any difficulty.
So in terms of NZPFU, and without getting into their procurement process, but they purchased the 6 MA and cab chassis on the back of the FENZ established contract. They chose to have their body build done by Fraser Fire for their 6. We went through a different process in terms of all the kind of the wave 2 of the trucks, the ones we're working through with Anglico at the moment. So there are some differences there. We note in terms of conversation around Fraser Fire Rescue, we're working with them on other trucks at the moment. They have 3 of the Type 5s in their workshops right now that they are building for us. So ultimately, we engage the market. We do so in accordance with the government procurement rules, and we work through that tender process.
I wouldn't say that we're trying to use scale as an excuse. You know, been very open, and I think it's open through the submission as well around, you know, the challenges that we've seen across our process. And the core lesson that I see in here is, you know, that the procurement of the really complex safety critical appliances means that it needs to be joined up and governed across all the different components, whether that's from the operational requirements to the procurement pathway to the contractor management, the supplier performance in there, how we test the plants, how we train the plants. It needs to be an end-to-end process. And looking back, there's certainly areas there that we can do better. And I know that talks to process, but making sure that that's fully scoped out at the start of the process means that you're successful at the end and you get the delivery at the end. That's been a learning for the organisation. It's been something that I've seen through the Type 3s that we haven't done well. So I'm not trying to make excuses for that. It has evolved how it's evolved. And now as an organisation, our focus has to be very much on how do we make sure we get that right going forward. Not try to blame others for where we are or the scope or the scale or the decisions that have been made of the past. It's about learning and how we take that forward from there to give you as the committee, whose role is to you know, actually test and challenge the assurance that we can get it right. And we can't do that for you today because ultimately, until we deliver, you're not going to be satisfied in that things. And rightly so, because there's been some questions asked and the organisation, I think, is being very upfront about, you know, some of those challenges that we've faced and we've seen. But we certainly have a commitment to getting that right and making sure that we can change that going forward.
And look, Chair, if I could just finish with one last thing.
Very quick, thank you.
Yep, you mentioned subtle differences between New Zealand's requirements, apparent requirements, and say the Australians, etc. You know, and I go back to what Tim Costley was asking, which is, you know, do you actually say, well, look, we're not going to make things too complicated for ourselves. We're going to ignore or leave out those subtle differences and just make life less complicated for ourselves, so we actually get engines on the road.
Yeah, Megan's just come from Australia, so I might get you just speak to that, Megan.
Yeah, I think that's a really good observation. I've worked across 3 jurisdictions in Australia, and as an operational firefighter, we rightly so want everything that we can get on our trucks. And I think part of my role is leading the workforce in understanding that sometimes there needs to be compromise, as Mr. Costley said, you know, 80% having trucks on the road to our needs, I think is really important. We're doing we're having conversations in operations around, for example, the type 4s at the moment. We did a desktop with Australia. There's 10 different types of type 4s in use in Australia. Only 2 of those could meet our axle weights. So the conversations you were talking about is unless we get those compromises in, we either have to get an exemption or we have to compromise on other aspects. So I think we will mature as an operational part of the organisation when we realise we've got to be really specific with our requirements and understand sometimes we can't have everything if we've got a restriction in cubic space or cubic weight.
Okay, Melissa, is this a start?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay, I'll go to you. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks very much. If I could actually go to, I know we've been talking about procurement of fire trucks, but could I actually go to the ICT procurement and the budget that you had? That's in relation to question number 15 of the post-hearing questions and the answers you've actually provided. The question that I like to ask is that you actually talk about the business intelligence project, which includes fleet fault logging, and that's $2.941 million. Could you actually explain what portion of that is actually fleet logging, as in fault logging? Because as far as I know, and I've spoken to fighters who actually say that they log everything on paper. So what have you actually provided with that budget?
Thank you. I'll ask Daryl to speak to the budget elements of that, which is just finding the right place for it.
And so we are implementing at the moment a fleet logging system. It's in pilot at this stage. It is built on the ServiceNow platform, and that will provide a digital electronic method for firefighters and others to log faults with appliances and have those faults addressed. So that's in the early stages. So we've been in the build phase on the ServiceNow platform to put that fault management system in place.
When is that going to actually be put in place?
So it's piloting now with one location, which is the Wellington location, and then it will be rolled out progressively over the next 6 months, region by region.
The operational component actually includes land mobile radios, mast and poles, and station turnout costs, actually supporting 640 stations and approximately 2,000 vehicles. If that is the case, the budget actually says mobility, availability messaging service, appliance cell phones, end user devices, all of those. I mean, end user devices 300,000. Appliance cell phone is 518,000. Availability messaging service is 623,000. Mobility is 662,000. What are those for?
I can answer that. Our mobility in our fire appliances, if you look at the type 3s, are an access to data for mapping, for building plans. It gives our people information in the field, and it's a critical part of ensuring their safety and the best tactics can be used at what they're facing. That's one example of what mobility means. And then
so the land mobile radio system doesn't actually provide that, which actually costs more than $7 million.
We still need to have understanding of where our people are in the field, have good communications when we're out there. So having the best radio comms, etc., is a really critical part of being a firefighter.
So the end user device 301,000 is, I guess, and that's one. Appliance cell phones, there's another, and that's 518,000. So which of them is actually the device that you're talking about?
We have multiple layers of communication on an appliance. This gives us redundancy.
Obviously.
Yeah, so we have tablets that give people just like it's not an iPad, but similar to an iPad. We've got mobile phones, gives us another layer of connectivity, and we have our radios both in the appliance and then portable radios as well. So we've got multi-layers of communication in the field.
Right. So what is risk reduction involved? $186,000.
So that is the build of the evacuation system that we're renewing presently, and it'll be a partial spend on that evacuation system, which essentially receives all of the reports throughout the year of trial evacuations, and then summarizes those reports and understands where the issues and risks are. So it'll be part of that suite of products.
So that is not included in the business intelligence portion, which is nearly $3 million.
The business intelligence is directed towards the fault system.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Melissa. Mike.
Thank you. Actually, mine's a follow-up to Melissa's question as well. Because there's been no national defect fleet recording system, and obviously it's now been implemented. When was that decision made to do that? To implement a national defects fleet recording system?
I'd have to come back to you with the absolute date on when that decision was made, but effectively, we maintain and actively manage the maintenance across the country. So what we have is it's really fragmented across the multitude of suppliers that we have, their maintenance contracts. Some of it is held by our people, and so that new approach is actually giving us greatest visibility at a national level around what it means for us.
Did you have a rough idea when that decision was made?
I wouldn't want to mislead you, so we can come back on
Because
that.
one of the things I note, and I'm just, once fully rolled out to all stations, it will strengthen governance.
Yeah.
And I'm just also wondering what the conversation has been between like management and the board around obviously the visibility of defects across the fleet, and whether they were asking the questions to management around not having a system in place.
Well, like I said, it's not about not having a system in place. It's been fragmented to have a look at it at the national level around what those things mean. So at a local level, those contracts are being managed. We've got staff across the country who are dedicated to managing the individual contracts, but as a collective to actually see where are things starting to evolve that might be systemic across the fleet that need to be addressed. That's what we'll get out of this new system that will allow us to do it.
Yeah, I understand that. And I guess my question is more around, was there any concern raised by the board about the fact that you're talking about it being fragmented? Was there any concerns raised by the board about this? Or is this purely from management?
Well, there's certainly, it's about the level of reporting necessary that we've given to the board around that, to look at that from a I guess a systemic view, opposed to the ongoing management of the different maintenance and pieces that are going through.
So as management, you were given the board, I guess, a view of the maintenance issues, but it was all a bit fragmented. Were the board saying this isn't good enough, or were the board just accepting what you were given? I'm just trying to work out where this is coming from, the drive, whether it's management or the board. I'm trying to work out like what the board knew and what the board was asking for.
I mean, I don't have visibility of what discussions the board had outside of us, but certainly from discussions around the systemic approach of maintenance, certainly was something that we've driven from inside the organisation, as I would expect from a management perspective, to make sure we're addressing this.
And just one last question, because you refer to obviously when appliances are unavailable to proceed or not available, and then you have your network deployment. So just or another appliance will probably come from the closest station to attend.
Yeah.
That then have to affect your response time. Is that correct? Like you have an 8-minute response time.
Yeah.
If you have an appliance that's unavailable, and you therefore have to deploy from another station, your response time is going to be impacted.
Well, it really depends on where in this response stream that appliance is. Like, because we don't just normally send one appliance to a call, we send a multitude. If it's the nearest appliance that breaks down or isn't available, then it will have a delay in that. But you also can't necessarily quantify that around availability only, like the challenges in response around, traffic congestion, around, there's a multitude of factors that layer into the time it takes to respond from wherever to an event. But it would only have the effect on that if it was the closest station that was going to respond to that to be available.
And I guess we saw from the data that there's been an uptick of appliances that are, I guess, out of action. And so would that not therefore concern you quite immensely, the fact that obviously we're starting to see a bit of a surge, which kind of corresponds to the age, and therefore the impact that may have on response times?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to diminish the impact that has on our firefighters and on the frustration that has when it's not available. But certainly at a national level, look at it from a national response of, what are our timelines from the network to be able to respond to individual events. So what's our performance on a national level to be able to respond when Kiwis call us.
And we do
Okay, thank
report on that
you.
in our speeds.
Yeah.
On our response times.
Sorry.
We report to government on our response times.
Through our accountability documents and our SPE.
Yeah.
Did it improve last financial year, the response time?
Again, they're areas that we try to get within, but there's a number of factors that mean that we can sometimes be outside of those.
That was actually a really simple question.
Okay.
Did the response time improve last financial year?
Can't remember offhand if you.
No, we'll have to
No, we'll have to come back to you. No.
So we're morphing into our last section now. So I'm going to ask Tim to speak, and then right at the end, I'll give you the chance to. So Tim.
Yeah, I just want to ask some really specific subs, just to pick up two things. Melissa asked about two-way radios and trucks. Has FENZ been removing any two-way radios from trucks and volunteer stations recently?
Sorry.
Have you been
Removing
taking
radios.
two-way radios off trucks and volunteer stations, specifically in Canterbury? I've been told that stations there have been losing radios from their trucks.
Certainly nothing that I'm aware of from a national approach to removing radios from volunteer appliances, but we would have to check that locally and come back to you.
Okay, and in terms of the fault logging, as I understand it, at the moment, until you can bring in a digital system, it's literally a paper logbook in the truck. That's how faults get reported.
Yeah, so if you have a look at page 18 of the submission, I think 2.34 to 2.46 takes you through that process.
So when it's done, they literally write down, this door's not quite right, or this, whatever it might be. It then gets ticked off once it's gone to the workshop. It doesn't say if any work was done. It doesn't say if the fault was confirmed and it was fixed versus if they couldn't confirm the fault, or it's acceptable, so it can stay in the limit. It can stay as it is. Like, it seems pretty rudimentary, really, right? There's not even a record of if things were fixed. I mean, is that an issue currently? I mean, do you have any actual situational awareness of the state of the fleet if all you've got is people wrote down something on paper and they've got a tick, which might mean it was fixed or it might mean it was actually fine?
Yeah, so again, if I take you back to the submission, it clearly shows there, the times that we use those logbooks for minor defects in there. If there's more material defects in that, they're addressed straight away through the maintenance providers. But that is the reason why, one of the reasons why we're implementing ServiceNow as a maintenance solution that will allow better visibility so that our firefighters can see when they log issues, what's the status and how it comes back and they've been repaired or not.
Because the next generation trucks have got a mean time between defect and mean time to fix, and time to fix defect and service agent request metrics, right? So you're going to need to be able to capture all of that data, because I assume that the provider, do they have a through life sustainment contract, emergency one, with the next generation?
Of the maintenance?
Yes.
So our ongoing maintenance is contracted across the country to maintenance providers within the country.
So if you're assessing the success of those next generation trucks, measuring things like mean time between defect, number of service agent requests, it's kind of, what do you do with that data if you're not, can you hold the in this case, emergency one, can you hold them to account if they don't reach a certain performance level or not?
Well, that is the whole purpose of having a more robust IT system and to support that through Service Now, so that we have better visibility of that. At the moment, like I say, it's very fragmented in our understanding of that. So we have even if it was a challenge, we would have an inability to actually keep the supplier accountable for that.
So let's say
Because of
that
that
you get this
fragmented
new
approach.
system in and fixes everything. You now have all this, the time in these categories. Can you then take that information and say to a provider, hey, your trucks were meant to meet these metrics, they haven't.
Yeah.
Is there a commercial comeback? Is there a claw back into them that gets us?
Unless Jim knows the answer to that, we'll have to come back to that because that's a contractual.
I don't know for this specific contract, and what I would note is within our approach to contract management more broadly, we are bringing in far more controls, which will dovetail into data such as this, which will allow us to go back to suppliers, but we would need to come back to you with this specifics on this one.
Yeah, it certainly says that your future project reviews will include timeliness, quality and cost, use of fault reporting and in-service performance metrics. But if there's not a commercial,
Introducing
if you've got no hook to get into them for that, then that's interesting. And it's good for you to know where you're at in terms of when you have to replace vehicles. As I understand it, the NZPFU only has payment milestones and delivery dates. Is that all that we were measuring for that contract? I mean, for instance, was the board tracking, well, the board did have been tracking nothing, but were we tracking anything other than payment milestones and delivery dates for them? Are there other metrics built into that contract in the NZPFU type plan there?
We need to come back on that. I don't have that.
There's certainly milestone acceptances through the term of that contract, but again, around the specifics of that contract, we'd have to come back to you. But I mean, it's been clearly identified. There's areas of our contract management that need to be matured and grown through there. And so, ensuring that we're, like I said before, having that end-to-end process of what's our operational requirements, what's our contract management, what's the design of the contracts, the design of the appliances, all that needs to be end-to-end process that's governed in one way, not looked at as bespoke elements that sit there across how those contracts come to fruition.
So my final one on that Anglican man, those trucks, they came from Europe. They got freighted to New Zealand. Then because just after that was done is when the cracking emerged. So I understand that. They got parked up. Then we freighted them back to the UK. So they've now done their first trip around the world. And then they got the body built and then they've come back here. And they appear to have been parked up for some time, particularly those last 12 while they get resolved. What is the cost of having to park up those trucks, or the storage cost?
We don't have those figures with you today, but certainly we can see if we can pull those together.
There was one in your submission that was in the ballpark of 30,000. Am I in the right order of magnitude?
I don't want to mislead you with information I haven't got on hand, so
Okay.
I'd rather take the time to get it right and come back.
And then I understand there was also about 130 or 150,000 on top of that for servicing them while they were parked up.
Like I say, we can come back to
Maybe
that.
we'll come back to those. Thanks.
I'm just checking, Melissa, is this a SUP? Okay, you go for it, because I've got a primary from Mike, so you go for it.
You're muted, Mel.
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just unmuted. Yes, thank you. It's a sub. You've actually said that you will come back to us with lots of, the questions that you can actually answer. This is several times in a row that we've actually sort of had you at Select Committee, and this is the inquiry where you should have all of the answers. So going with that, the answer to engaging external consultants, you've actually put, two, one a PR company and the other one a law firm to actually help you with the inquiry. If you're coming back with more answers, you've already spent more than $90,000 to pay for these two companies. How much more do you expect to pay?
I mean, last time we were here, we spoke about the contracted expertise that we had in to help us, and to be clear, like we're not designed as an organisation to have that sort of expertise that's needed to support a review of this type as a permanent component of the organisation. So we do need to bring that resource in to support the organisation to actually provide the information that you require to there. And on top of that, like we've explained before, a lot of our systems and the way things have been documented need to actually be really interrogated to find the information. The legacy of what Fire and Emergency is working with from that document management and ICT components is part of the challenge that we have in how we build an organisation that's robust and has that information on our fingertips to ensure we can make better decisions through there. So I can't give you a figure on what that will cost, or even whether we have that information at our fingertips. But what I will say is, we want to be open, we want to be transparent with the Select Committee, and we're on a journey of improvement to ensure that, what we've experienced with the Type 3s in particular, isn't a journey that we travel again for the organisation. There's been, like I said, a long tail, there's been decisions made along the way, and our role is to actually work through that and ensure that we can get safe, robust appliances on the run for all of our firefighters to serve New Zealanders going forward.
How long have you been the CEO? Because the questions that the Select Committee has actually provided to you are operational in nature. There might have been some that weren't, but specifically about equipments that haven't been delivered, equipments that has actually have had faults. It's all operational questions. And the fact that you had to hire outside help, PR company and law firm to actually find answers for yourself and paying exorbitant amounts of money actually tells me that you really need to think about how your organization is actually operating as a CEO.
Yeah, and it is always a balance of whether you employ those specialist skills permanently, or whether you bring them in when you need them for the organisation. And that's a balance that we'll continue to assess as we move forward.
I wasn't talking about the skill sets of the lawyer and the PR company. I was talking about information that you have at hand about trucks that are actually at fault, trucks that you've actually implemented and actually are on the road, and trucks that are not actually on the road. These are information that you should have at hand as the CEO. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you at all. That is information that you should have on hand, and that's why, we are looking at our systems that we have in place, how we collect information, even, what we're doing now around the service now to actually have a not a fragmented view, but an accurate view around maintenance across the country. Suggests some of the systems that we're working for that aren't necessarily fit for purpose for the organisation moving forward.
Yeah, we shouldn't have had to have an inquiry to get.
Thanks, Melissa. Okay, Mike.
Thank you. I just have a quick sub on that Melissa's question. I'm just curious, what skills didn't you have that you need to have a PR firm to help you with this process?
Well, I think making sure that, we had a good understanding of what the committee was after, and being able to understand, what the committee was looking for as far as the breadth of the review into fleet. It was quite a broad scope that sits in there. So, what are the real things that you really want to understand opposed to, you know, what we might be.
And they require a PR firm. My question is, we've received a lot of submissions around basically saying that the issue is not the fleet, it's a wider issue, and the fleet's actually a symptom of a bigger problem within FENZ. How do you respond to that?
I think lots of people look at FENZ as an organisation and they see a fire service that's been around for hundreds of years. For FENZ as an organisation, it's been around for 9 years, and it's inherited a lot of legacy challenges of bringing all those together. And so there is a complex mix in building an organisation that's resilient for New Zealand going forward. You know, like I've said, we've got challenges around how we build the right IT systems and modernise IT systems. We're obviously aware around the challenges that we have around the fleet, our property. So all of our asset classes sit across there. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we're continuously applying a seamless delivery of our services into communities, which I'm really proud of, is the service that we deliver to communities every day. So there is a real complexity in how the organisation's coming together, working to build that and grow that within a constrained fiscal envelope, as all organisations need to do. So, you know, we can't do everything at once. We need to build out the planning. And a lot of the things that you would expect of an organisation to be in place just weren't in place at the start, you know, and some of that long-term strategic thinking and strategic planning. So we're moving the organisation to doing a lot more strategic planning and thinking longer term, rather than the response nature of dealing to things as they come up. Okay. And that's a cultural move for the organisation as well.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so you're kind of saying, like, although we're here today and we are doing an inquiry on the fleet within FENZ, there's actually other issues that need to be sorted as well.
I'd say we're balancing our priorities across the number of challenges that we have as an organisation within the funding model that we have.
There's multiple issues, right, within FENZ?
There's some challenges. We've got plans around those of how we address them. The asset management plans across our assets, you know, really give a clear picture of how we address those things. And just like any organisation has challenges, there are things that we need to work through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Andy.
Yeah, thank you. It was actually a sup to
That's all good.
Sorry?
Yep, go for it. That's all good.
Yeah, no, it's up to the original question around you've bought all these well, I just want to check, because we had the questions about the carrying cost of the parking cost, if you like, of the engines that you bought which aren't operational. But I'm interested in whether you've paid for them and the cost of actually holding vehicles for an extended period of time that you don't own. It's not a parking cost, it's a financing cost. And whether you actually own them, whether there's any warranty arrangements you've got with the providers if things are not satisfactory. Who's carrying the can?
So, Mr. Foster, I believe those are fire and emergencies costs. I'm still trying to isolate those costs. I've been working on those for a while.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, sorry, not difficult to isolate in all of the costs.
Yeah, okay. Look, I think it'd be good to understand, because clearly they can't be insubstantial if you've had these vehicles for quite some time. You've, as we heard, sent them back to the UK and, you know, and back. So that's not going to be cheap. And if you're paying for that rather than somebody else, the supplier, I think we want to know that and what the order of magnitude is.
Okay, thank you. Lamonga. Thanks, Andy. Lamonga.
Thanks, Chair. Just patiently listening. Kerry, you've talked about asset classes and a number of things as you've explained to the Select Committee. Your workforce is your biggest asset class. Can you highlight the fact that you've got all these things, appliances, trucks, you talked about in the Select Committee. What about your workforce in the training and development programs? Will there be a pivot to ensure that when you've got new types of trucks and you've got different pressures that the workforce, in terms of them pivoting to the requirements of responding to emergencies?
Yeah, thank you. And I guess the focus has been very much on the fleet of the different asset classes, because that's the focus of this review. Very much in our strategy, one of the key threads of that is how we support our people. And part of that is training. One of the areas that have identified that we need to create some savings so that we can reinvest into the business is around is around training, and how we have a systemic approach to that to ensure that that's fit for, like I said before, what's a complex environment around 11,800 roughly volunteers across the country, and a dispersed workforce across the country as well to keep them safe. So very much when I look at people, a lot of the focus is on how do we create safe systems of work, and what are the things that we're doing to ensure that our people are safe. And I'm really proud of the delivery of our service into communities, and in such varied natures. If you think of the nature of things that our people get deployed to right across the country every day, when you look at the safety of our people and the ability to adapt and move tactics to ensure they are safe and the public is safe, I think is extraordinary by our people. And that's a real credit to the service that's carried out every day, whether that's being across our career staff, whether that's across our paid staff. And people agree is their most important asset. And that's why the focus of the strategy is around supporting our people in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the final question goes to Tim.
Well, thank you. So just to confirm, I'll use the Anglican Man as an example. How many of those, that project that started back in August 2019, how many of those are in use today of those 30?
Tranche 2, we're
Tranche
referring
2.
to. We had 3 in service, and then we took those out while we identify the behaviour of the high pressure delivery automation.
That's because of the built-in protections, which mean if both, is it switch off at the same time or turned off, then it will shut down the pump.
Yeah.
And potentially you get a firefighter on the other end of it that then can't get water in there.
Yeah, so we spent the day with our specialists last Friday, understanding how the design is. It's a brand new, I guess it's like an autopilot for firefighter pumping. And it was really for our specialist trainers to understand the behaviour of the pump, under what conditions it behaves. So
is
I
that
believe,
perhaps a function of us not testing them before we ordered them? We might have found that out, right?
well, it was our people had tested them extensively, our operational testing. It has to be
But the
very
operational testing was
specific.
3 months after we put the order in for 28.
Yeah, there's a series of things that have to happen at exactly the same time to get this behaviour, and that only was identified late in the day, so to speak. So as soon as it was identified, until we understood it, precautionary and keeping firefighters' safety, Kerry and I had a discussion and we took it offline. I'd much rather sit here and tell you that 3 were online.
No, I
today.
get it.
Yeah.
I'm not questioning the
Yeah.
operational decision. That's not for me to make, but I'm just wanting to understand where we are. Can I just ask the board chair, because you've been sitting there politely, I guess as we sit here and we listen to it, right? 7 years ago, we started a project. 7 years later, 0 of the 30 trucks in use for the reasons that we've just heard. None of them have a warranty on them because that has expired due to time. They weren't tested possibly at all, but certainly maybe a little bit of acceptance testing at the most before we place the order for another 28. Those 28 have done more travel around the world than I have in the last 4 years. And then there's commercial, 12 of them aren't in use for commercial issues that we haven't been able to go into here, but there are perhaps other issues lingering in behind them. Not to mention the use of contractors and lawyers and things to support this. I mean, what level of comfort do you have right now as a new board chair?
Thank you. Thank you for those insights and questions. Well, my my response would be that the situation is not acceptable. The fact that we're still dealing with these issues several years after the procurement began is disappointing for firefighters, for communities, for FENZ, and very concerning for me. So from my point of view, having just come in, I've got to make sure that as chair of the board and with the assistance of the other board members, we put the appropriate assurance and accountability on management to make sure that, yes, we've got these historical issues, but we need to move forward. And throughout this afternoon, we've covered both areas, the challenges with type 3 and the fact that even the aerials are not delivered, but also going back to the points made by Mr. Foster and yourselves, that we need to have a pipeline of renewals of these appliances and of our properties, as a mechanical, systemic, it should be in our DNA, put it that way, just like firefighting is. So from an organizational point of view, that would be my challenge, that coming into this organization and taking into account all the issues that the organization may have inherited, but is also facing right now, we need to find a way forward to give confidence and credibility to everyone that we serve.
Thank you. I think people would understand that answer, and I think certainly people want to see accountability. Can I finish by asking you where that accountability sits with the board? And I want to make the point that I think when any Kiwi dials 111 and asks for the fire service, they should and will have huge confidence and trust in those that are coming out to serve them. Most of them volunteers in smaller communities around New Zealand, a really professional paid workforce as well. And I see the value that they add on the ground. My question is, what value have the board added over this period? Because of all the issues that we've talked about, and I take the most visible one that this committee has talked about in at least 5 bespoke meetings now with FENZ, is the man tranche 2. And I understand that you weren't the chair at the time, but the committee has been misinformed, possibly misled, including by the previous board chair, around what role the board took, what questions were asked. There is no record of them. Apparently there were subcommittees that might have discussed them, but there is absolutely no record of more than 2 years of the board ever asking about one of the most high profile issues that we have been dealing with here. Not to mention the other things that we've just covered now, like what more would it take for every other board member to resign? Or where would the point come that you would not have confidence in the board that you are leading?
Those profound questions. Look, just to start off with, you made a very good point. The public see the firefighters and the fire engines. The firefighters, they see whether the organization behind them actually works, the engine works. And as chair, it's my job to make sure they both work. So what we've been covering this afternoon is there is, I know from my own experience, very high regard for firefighters, for those individuals who go out and help others. And it seems that the organization has let that down. So what would it take for board members to look at themselves and see whether they've been adding value or not? Well, I would say if any of them have been watching today, that would be a fair start. But I would be expecting the board members to actually do their job, just like I would be doing. We have to make sure that we focus on good governance, provide support to management, but hold them to account. And where they're struggling because we have systemic issues, we need to address them. At this point in time, I think I can say no more, but to give you the assurance that I hope that I can make a difference.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Ravine. Kerry, is there anything you wanted to finish with?
I just really want to thank the committee. I mean, it's your role to really put a focus on the organisation, and coming out of that, it helps us to improve and help us to move forward. And hopefully you've seen, you know, we've been really transparent and exposing the challenges that we've come up with and engaging with it. So, you know, I look forward to continuing to work with the committee, whether in this capacity or just as the normal hearings that we have. But thank you for your focus, and look forward to see what comes through your review.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And thank you, Ravine, as well, for coming in.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, everyone. We're going to move into closed session shortly.